Once upon a time, there lived a witch who slept in a forest of thorns for 1,000 years. One day, a handsome golden-haired prince found her, but he was too young. The witch took him under her wing. However, she left him when he was 15 years old. The prince did not come to her again, and the witch fell asleep again. The prince wandered through the forest for a long time to find her, after receiving great strength and power. Then he made his way through the thorn vines and fought monsters. All this to find the small castle where the witch slept. The prince, who had not seen her for 10 years, was so happy that he burned down the forest and her house. And after that, he proposed to her, and they lived happily ever after. That's the end of it. Ariel thought this story was about her. The blonde confirmed this, and after that said that he loved her so much that he wanted to destroy her. This is Rickert Cedric von Delium, who is the Emperor of Elysium. He is also the same prince who was raised by the witch. Ariel Aschelder. Louise Arundel is the witch who raised the prince. The emperor did not understand why she could not choose one thing, and believed that she did not want to be destroyed so much. Ariel suggested that they just say that they love each other, but she is not sure that they will be able to live happily ever after. The emperor noted that he could not guarantee that she would like the process, but that was his final goal. The witch said that the process was also important, but the emperor did not think so. The girl demanded that he answer normally, and so began to hit him with a pillow. The emperor jumped away from this. The girl said that he should say what he was going to do. Rickert remained silent for a while, and did not understand why she was so interested in this. He noted that you can just wait and see everything for yourself. The girl would like to know when everything went wrong. She lived in the eastern monster forest, in a cozy and precious territory. This was until the emperor came to wake her up and take her away. It is even strange that this child managed to become the ruler of the country, but when she entered the outside world, then the woman realized that 1,000 years had passed. Ariel had no idea where they were now. The emperor dragged her into the palace without even giving her time to get used to the new world. Her appearance caused real chaos. The emperor brought some village girl, so everyone started talking about it. There were rumors that she was from the eastern monster forest and lived somewhere on the outskirts of the capital. At first glance, she seems so clumsy, and she is some kind of ignoramus who does not understand the world around her. It's impossible not to overhear the conversation when they discuss her loudly. Ariel has only been here a short time, so she doesn't yet understand how this world works. Perhaps she seems stupid for asking questions. Maybe it's all because of this that she's illiterate. That's what the rumors were. She ended up in the yard, but she can't even read. It's completely unclear where his quantity brought such a stupid girl. But Ariel thought it was unfair because she was Princess Aschelder. She is the great sorceress of the kingdom of Arundel, and now they call her illiterate. But in this world, the writing system has changed, so it is unfair, and she has no one to discuss such injustice with. Then someone pushed her. It was the servant who brought in the fragile things. They carried cultural treasures that had been evacuated from the monster forest. Then, when the girl heard this, she realized that these looked like things from her house. They couldn't believe it because they saw the language of the ancient kingdom of Arundel there. These were magical books, so they believed that ancient magic would be revealed to them. They needed to start researching right away, and His Majesty didn't just destroy the forest for no reason. This book looks familiar. I think it was in the hut. So the girl realized that this was her diary, which she kept when she was 15. The girl who was dragged out of bed threatens to reveal her shameful secrets from 1,000 years ago to the whole world. These men drove her away because they were very busy and she was blocking their way. But then they realized that it seemed to be the woman that Her Majesty had brought in. They were shocked that the guests were so uneducated. But the girl is not a stupid village girl. She is the princess of a magical kingdom, even though they fell 1,000 years ago. The problem is not even that it's her diary that is her dark past. They were simply delighted when they saw the ancient runic symbol, which means the great sorceress Aschelder. This handwriting is definitely her writing, so this is a great discovery. They repeat the same thing. They can believe that they have found the records that she forever. But these are the dark corners of Ariel's past. This life is doomed, so it is very interesting whether it is possible to reincarnate or return to the past. Such were a couple of days in the palace. She had no idea where to begin to unravel this knot. And when it all went wrong, it seemed to have happened about 15 years ago. Ariel was sleeping as usual, but while she was sleeping, someone came to her. She didn't understand who it was. She saw that he had light hair. This boy looked like an angel. He was surprised that she was alive. The boy presented her with a knife and noted that he was simply wondering if she would wake up if he stabbed her with the knife. It is completely unclear what is happening and why this crazy child is doing this. Ariel told this child that if he stabbed her in the neck, no one would wake up, and she would simply die. First, she needs to deal with this dagger. Rickard is the future emperor, and after her words, he was surprised that it was true. That's where it all started. When this child with blonde hair came and disturbed her sleep. The eastern forest is filled with thorn thickets and monster trees. Time moves much more slowly inside the forest than outside, which is why it is sometimes called the Eastern Time Forest, a forest where time stands still. The borders of this forest are impassable. Outsiders cannot enter it. Ariel, a shielder, princess of Arundel and great magician, spent many lonely years in this forest, and there was a seal on it that kept her imprisoned for over 100 years, but she almost always slept, so time flew by for her. Ariel woke up every time the forest seal weakened, but it didn't last long, so she didn't have time to feel lonely. After waking up, she had a lot of things to do: check the magic circle and the sealed portal in the forest. If this seal is broken, the dimensional club monsters will crawl out of the portal. Then she can study magic in peace. The awakening doesn't last very long. She needs to have time to make at least some progress. Someone was knocking on her door and begging her to open it, but the girl decided that she would just ignore it. She decided that she didn't hear anything and tried to convince herself of this. But her door was broken down, and the girl was shocked by this. The blonde was happy because the door opened. Ariel didn't understand what kind of reaction this was and told him to stop laughing. She had no idea what was wrong with this stupid child. Her peaceful life in the forest was shattered when that yellow-haired man came and put a knife to her throat. She had so many interesting things that he was captivated. He picked up one of the plates, and it fell from him. He said it slipped out on its own. Ariel was furious because this wasn't his playroom, so she asked who he was anyway. She noted that no one had been able to enter this forest for a long time, so she didn't understand how he ended up here. The boy noticed that his mother told him not to talk to strangers, so he turned away. Ariel was simply furious. He imagined a knife to her throat. He did not want to talk to her. The boy noticed that she had opened her eyes. A princess sleeping in the forest wakes up after being kissed by a prince, and she continued to sleep. And then the girl asked in horror what he had done. The boy was surprised that she had never heard the fairy tale about a princess opening her eyes when she was kissed. He believed that the curse was not lifted because she was a witch. The girl threw him out of the house in horror and asked what kind of curse they were talking about and started calling him names. The boy said he covered her nose and mouth, but she turned pale and looked like she was going to die. He also started talking because he stopped, because his mother told him not to kill people. He almost strangled her. He also said that at first, he thought of waking her up by hitting her on the head with a stone, but his mother said that he shouldn't break people's heads. Ariel noted that her mother taught him a lot. It sounds strange, but that's why he took the dagger, because the boy thought that she would wake up from the pain in her neck, but she opened her eyes earlier. The girl repeats again, a dagger in the neck can kill, and his mother told him not to kill people. And he even beams when he says this. It's very good that she woke up. She almost died in her sleep. It was too miserable a death for a great magician. She didn't understand where he went again. It would be better if he just went home. Rickard said that this place was filled with the magic of the great sorceress Ashilduri. Ariel was surprised to hear that her magic could be felt here, as she thought it was impossible. The woman decided to ask if he knew Ashildur and her magic, and did not understand where he heard it from. In the world outside, hundreds of years must have passed, during which time all the following disappear. So he also realized that the magical power in the forest belonged to her. The boy said that ancient ruins and magical artifacts, he saw magic circles in which Ashildur's power remained. Now it was clear what was left behind. There was a lot of her power in this forest. Rickard noted that they said that time had stopped in him, and it was believed that this was the reason there was much less power in artifacts. Ariel realized that the magic of this forest surrounded the child. It looks like it's welcoming a powerful wizard. After that, the boy said that it was time for him to leave. The woman was not even surprised. Rickard said there was nothing much to do here. Next time he would bring toys. And after that, she used the magic circle to teleport. The woman could not verify that he had actually used the magic circle. This is the one that only first-class wizards can use. Maybe he is just a genius, and she thought about it in order to make him her student. But she still decided to give it up, because he doesn't come for long anyway, and therefore she won't pay attention and won't think about him. She also told the tree to stop the intruders and not pretend to be a simple tree. After which this child came to her again. He has such a strong presence that she cannot help but notice. He was glad that she was awake again, but Ariel didn't understand how he got through the door. It seems he has some skills, but the boy said that this monster tree just helped him. Ariel now realized that it was true, but she had asked him to stop the boy not to tear down her door. Ariel asked why the hell he had torn out all his branches in the first place, but the boy said that this was not so, and he almost fell when he ran. She caught him on a tree. The girl was surprised that you had a monster, but the boy said that he simply caught it, but she hoped he wasn't hurt. The forest loved this child. He usually reacts badly to any strangers except this boy, and she feels a huge magical power in it. It shines so strongly that any person who feels magic will start rubbing their eyes from the brightness. Although she is considered an archmage, she can now understand that the forest is interested in the magical power that overflows it. But this tree is a traitor. They should drive away violators and not play with the child. The boy suggested the tree to play on that vacant lot. Ariel began to say that this was not his playground. She noticed a wound on his face and realized that it was unlikely to be a wound from playing. It looked like a blow or a cut. It wasn't very fresh, but she realized that someone was beating the child on a regular basis. Hope, dear, he looks healthy. There are definitely rich families, but he looks kind of beaten up. The boy said that there was a magic circle in the garden, but it had to be the size of a large mansion or castle. The only people who could harm him in such a house were his family, parents, brothers, someone close. But why should she even think about it? So Ariel decided that she just wouldn't create misunderstandings without a reason. It's just a puppy, a golden puppy, a dog that came to play in her yard, a dog with light fur. So she decided to continue ignoring him. It didn't matter whether the boy was hurt or not. But she couldn't help herself and looked back. And then the boy was glad that she was looking at him, but she began to say that it was not so. But the boy was sure that their eyes met. The child will grow up and forget about this forest. She thought that soon everything will calm down again. But this is not so. Someone touched her door, and she decided it was the boy again. When she saw him, she was in complete horror and asked what had happened to him. She couldn't ignore his wounds anymore because he looked just awful. A mother and child from the imperial palace, where everyone ignores them. The maids decided not to greet this young gentleman. After all, he is the maid's son. It was better to pretend not to notice him. No one dared approach the prince, whose existence hung by a thread. Then another prince came up to him and called him names, saying that he was still just as stupid. This is Frederick Brian Vandelium, who is Cedric's half-brother. He asked where to hit him today. It was Brian, who was born only 5 months earlier. The woman realized that his older brother had beaten him, but she couldn't think that someone could be such a baby, because he was so beautiful, and she needed to at least protect his face. She thought that such beauty could not be destroyed. He did not have even the slightest sense of aesthetics. The boy said that he killed his horse. Ariel thought she misheard, so she asked again. Cedric said he kept pestering him, and he wanted to kill him, but his mom told him not to. The woman she did that, he really did not kill his brother. He noted that it was true, and he just wanted to hurt him a little. He set a trap for him, which caused the boy to fall off his horse, and then they took the horse away because it hurt his brother. But Cedric thought it would have been better if he had died, but he got it from the poor animal. He didn't want to kill his brother because, well, you have to listen to your mother. The woman thought that he really was kind of weird. Ariel remarked that it was a pity that the horse had died, and she thought it was good that he was at least thinking about her. But he had killed her, even if not on purpose. Now his brother will be even more annoying, and he thinks that his mother told him not to do this, just like the poem Ariel didn't think that being annoyed was enough of a reason to kill. The boy said that he was so annoying that he wanted to rip his eyes out of his skull, but his mother forbade that too. Rel understood him and said that brothers are different after all. She didn't quite understand what was wrong with this child. He was told to be patient until he became an adult, and so he was patient. She hoped that he would restrain himself, and after this, he shouldn't smile so brightly when he says something like that. But it's good that the boy listens. His mother put a lot of effort into raising him. One small mistake can write him down in history as a villain. She tries to correct it with instructions. It's just amazing such a person can only be respected. The lady asked what his mother was doing now, and the boy said that she had died. Her last words were a request not to kill people, so he must fulfill this wish. May she rest in peace. She tried to correct this boy's character until the very end. But the boy could have become even better if he had lived a little longer. With such an angelic face, he would have achieved a lot. She was shocked that no one was stopping her brother from fighting and gave him some candy. She noticed that he had scars that had appeared long ago. These candies were old. The boy's brother burst into the room and shouted that it was he who killed his horse. And he also shouted that the boy was to blame for breaking his leg. But Cedric said that he should have broken his head too. After that, the older brother hit him and asked how he dared to say such a thing. The older brother said that he would kill him and could not believe that such a yellow child was a member of their family. No one can even stop him. Prince Brian's character is very unpredictable, but he beats Prince Cedric. They shouldn't be stupid. This is a degenerate, useless maid. A prince only in words. Cedric is so unneeded that he has only seen His Majesty a couple of times. Brian screamed that he would kill him if he saw him again. After that, Cedric stood up and asked if he was finished yet. This made the prince furious, and he attacked him, shouting like a father for him to die. Ariel understood everything and now knew that he was being bullied because of his mother's origin. Nobody cares that he is being beaten. He is left completely alone after her death. He has to endure everything on his own, and no one takes care of him. The boy said that there are servants, they give clothes, food, and other things. But the girl thought it was their job. Cedric said she had a delicious candy, so he asked if there was any more. She gave him more candy, so she was glad she had stocked up earlier. Ariel thinks she now understands why the child stayed in the forest for so long and always came back to play. It's all because no one is watching him and no one is playing with him. She can imagine how he lives among many people in a large mansion. Ariel would have stayed here too if she had been in his place and could have endured the loneliness of the mansion. But that's all. Only when he comes to this forest can he smile so sincerely. That's why he continues to hang around her. Ariel began to ask why he was taking off the bandages, and the boy noted that he simply thought he was feeling better. The girl asked him again if he thought it was really like that, and was then surprised because she had done it herself, but the effect was not bad. But she couldn't even imagine that it helped so much. The boy was in shock. The witch knows about medicines too. He really feels better. Ariel started saying that she was not a witch, so the boy asked who she was then. The girl fell silent, and he asked again who she was. She didn't know what to say, because she couldn't say that she was the great sorceress, Ashildr, who lived hundreds of years ago. Well then, he will ask why she still lived and why she doesn't use magic if she is a sorceress. He might ask why she isn't standing there. Will be a lot of questions, so it's necessary to hide the fact that she is the sorceress Ashildr. So the girl said that he could just call her Ariel and not witch. The boy also introduced himself and said that his mother called him Cidi, so she could call him that too. Ariel noted that he always came here to play, and he could continue to do so. No need to worry. He can come here as much as he wants. The boy became embarrassed and noticed that she smiled too. From that day on, almost nothing changed. Cidi often came to the forest to play and played by himself as before, and he kept coming back with bruises from fights. He was hurt again, and he said it was nothing. But Ariel decided that she shouldn't talk nonsense. This life with a child is temporary anyway. She didn't study medicine, but it was worth trying, and then she could make a more effective medicine. It was a fleeting moment. The child will lose interest in this place, never to return here again. They will be together until it happens, and she can help him not to get hurt early. She can treat him so that he heals faster. She wished he would not feel any more, no matter what wounds he received. She thought she could take care of him in any situation, without harm to either of them. However, one day he returned and was covered in blood with a knife in his hands. She didn't understand what happened, but the boy just looked at her and smiled. Ariel didn't understand why he was like that. What he did, he looked like a maniac, and why he had that expression on his face. He was so smug. She asked him where he got so much blood from, but the boy said that it wasn't his blood. The woman said that she knew because there were no wounds on him, and she did not understand how he was in such a situation. Maybe he was just hungry, because the boy asked her if there was any food. Then he noted that it was all because of his brother. The woman began to believe that he simply poured blood on him because he was quite a child. He mocks, hits his brother, Cedric said that he was bragging about the new horse. He called him and said that he had a new horse. He thought that the boy would kill this one too. A servant came up to them and began to tell His Highness that this horse had not been trained yet, but they'll take care of everything. But Brian said he took the biggest one on purpose because it's dangerous. After this, the horse came closer to the boy, and his brother thought that he was quite scared. After that, he hit the horse on the back, and it went wild. But when it started attacking the boy, it started bleeding from an artery in its neck. The servants did not understand at all how this was possible and how it happened. The boy noted that there was danger and asked what to do because another one had died. Cedric told his brother to take better care of his pets. This is where Brian got really scared and wet himself. He ran to his mom to complain. The woman realized that this meant that first, he imagined a dagger to the man's throat, and now to the horse. The boy said that it was simply dangerous, and he could have died. After all, he was still a child and could have been scared. So the woman said that he was right, and he needed to think about his safety. He could attack first if his life was threatened. Cedric was doing this for the first time, so he wasn't aware it was better to move away so that the blood wouldn't get on him. And Ariel told him not to think about such things as how to become better at murder. He is not a criminal. Others should think about their behavior. And now she offered to bathe him. She knows he has problems with his character and behavior, but she is an exception. She should not be attacked. Even though she is not responsible for him, she needs to protect her neck because there is no point in teaching someone else's child. But she tries to wash him off, but she does not wash off her. It's a good thing she still had Daniel's clothes. She almost made him walk around in just a towel. She was shocked that no one cared that he was walking around covered in blood. The boy said that his servants were usually busy, so no one came. The woman began to explain that he was simply being fooled. Cedric said that Ariel was frowning again, but he was fine. The lady did not understand at all how he could be okay. Meanwhile, outside the window, the tree was already waiting for the boy. He almost forgot that the monster was worried about him, and that's why he said that he was fine. Mom warned that after her death, people who got close to him would have ulterior motives. She said that no one would do anything for him for free, so he needed to be careful. Ariel believed that this was indeed true. Mama Cidi was very worried about the time when she would leave him alone. Let's go in all the memories. There remained traces of her upbringing. The child was left even without his helpless mother, so it is completely unclear how he will cope with the cold in people's hearts. He must be careful, suspicious, and prejudiced. It's the only way he can survive into adulthood, but they can't even imagine how lonely he feels in the process. She said this with the understanding of what it would lead to Mom, who leaves her little child. She could only talk to him with tears in her eyes. She probably couldn't calm down in peace because she was so worried about him. It would be easier if his personality was simple and straightforward, but he was born a man who can cause doubts in the souls of even the most indifferent people. Ariel said that he was handsome, and the boy was surprised and asked again. The lady was shocked that he had never been told such a thing. The boy said that he had simply always been called ugly. In principle, this is true. A child with a knife is scary, especially when he is covered in blood and smiling. After which, the boy said that Ariel was also beautiful. The lady agreed with him and noted that his eyes were definitely not deceiving him. But the boy said that he was telling me about her face, so the lady told him to return her praise. Cedric just wanted to say that she has a colorful aura around her, and it's beautiful. Only Ariel has these colors. They spin and shine. Here is a little red, big and yellow. Above her is a green star. They all glow so beautifully. The woman was shocked that he could see them. It looks like he has magical eyes. That's the sign of a great wizard. So the girl decided to drag him along with her and said that he should remember the shape of the circle. He must connect the colors the same, but the boy did not understand. What was she talking about and asked again. Ariel told him again to connect the small red dot with the green one and add magic. If he sees magic lines, then he will not have to study the theory of magic and go the hard way. It will be enough to connect several dots in front of his eyes, and the magic circle will build itself. What he did was just great, and now he has to make a big red dot. The boy was simply delighted because he was able to use magic, but Ariel said that he only connected two, but when he used more, they were surrounded by fire. He was shocked that he did it. Ariel couldn't believe it. It was a minimum average level fire magic circle, and he wanted to say that he built it with 2 points. She immediately started telling him to use water magic urgently. The trees were in bad shape, but the boy immediately quickly created a circle of water. Everyone was shocked. The boy only gave away what he had drawn. Well, the magic circle appeared on its own, and it seems to have worked. Ariel didn't understand what the hell it was, and how it even worked. The girl said that he was a genius, because it was simply impossible to meet a magician with such potential in the Forbidden Forest. She thought it was fate, and then she became greedy. She wanted to raise a child with great talent, and she made a choice she shouldn't have made. The boy said Ariel was wet. She understood that it would take a long time to correct his character. But still, she also thought that the main thing is not character, but magic, because it is enough to simply make him a strong magician. But her kind side believed that time passed slowly here, and if Cidi stayed for long, it would grow very slowly. While the evil part thought that he would grow up later, and it thought that it would take 10-15 years to learn. I'm bothering someone else. They say people with black hair are never grateful, but he has light hair, not black. Well, everything will be fine, so it's better to wean him. Wash him, and then he will become even more beautiful. The boy wondered what Ariel was thinking about, because she was mumbling something under her breath. She asked Cidi if he wanted to study mine. I'll have to teach him. Still, she decided that the future she would sort it out later, and everything would be fine. This is about the wrong decision based on insufficiently reasonable judgments. The boy was surprised and asked again if Ariel wanted to teach him magic. She said it would be fun and something to write about. He would become strong enough to defeat Brian. She just waited impatiently for his answer, and the boy didn't even know what to say. Cidi said that if Ariel wants it, he will try it. He thinks Brian will resist anyway. That's great, and then next time she'll give him some advanced book. We need to go down to the basement. The boy smiles again very brightly. However, the boy noted that she was really good at it. Ariel thought about which book to choose for him, and collected several. She decided to start with one book, and when the boy opened it, it was a voice that said these were letters. She was surprised that he didn't know the letter. The boy said that he had never read anything like it. The girl was shocked that the young master of a large estate had not even been taught to read and write. Usually, they hire tutors from an early age. The boy said that he had them until his mother died. The woman realized that things were back in his family. The perfect way to abuse a child and turn him into a useless bastard. They do not teach and excite him, so that he cannot escape anywhere, even when he is an adult. So Ariel decided that she had to ruin this plan. The lady said that they would study hard, and he would become a very smart magician. He could just trust her. She asked him to wait, because she could look for basic books to learn the letters from. The boy said that he knew modern letters, but not the ancient language that we have for thousands of years, and she was trying to teach him that. It sounds fun, so he decides to give it a try. There are a lot of books in the basement, so she comes, but she's not sure if there's anything basic. Then she found a picture book and decided that it wouldn't cover everything she needed, but it would be useful so she could give it a try. It's not at all clear what Daniel was thinking when he assembled this in the magic lab, but she still won't understand the idea. Then the boy came into her and asked who Daniel was. She mentioned her when she gave him clothes, so he wants to know who she is. He thought there was someone else here, but the woman denied it. She said that there wasn't any more, because he died a long time ago. So this is the basement, and there are a lot of books in here. There are things she doesn't usually count, like picture books. And when they figure out the base, she will let him read everything else. There will surely be something rare here that is not found in the outside world, and he will become the best wizard. She suggested that he look at this since he was here. This book with fairy tales. These are the letters he must learn. When winter came, she decided that was enough for today. She noted that he knew most of the letters, so they could start teaching him. The basics took a long time. Cedric said that he sees magical power that others don't, so he thinks it's enough to just memorize the magic circles. The woman did not understand what he was talking about. Of course, with such vision, it was easy to start, but he would not receive deep knowledge. If he understands the principles of magic, he will be able to use them, create new circles, and quickly memorize existing ones. There was a huge difference between spell groups and understanding the principles, and he shouldn't think that magic was that simple. The boy noticed that she was some kind of fanatic, although she herself did not use it. It is unclear why an archmage cannot be a fan of magic. He said that if they were finished, then he would go, but the lady asked him to stop. She told him to take the book because it contains simple magic circles. It would be great if he looked at it. He can take it with him and read it in his free time. The boy realized that it was like a gift for him. Ariel was surprised and noted that she had asked him to study and he could take it if he wanted. The boy was happy and smiled because now this book was his. He was very happy that it was his book and said that it was very beautiful, and he liked it very much. It looks like it. It looks like it's the first time he gets something like that. Now the boy understood how much he could increase today. But here are ancient magical symbols from the kingdom of Arendal. He doesn't sense Ariel's magical powers, but she has deep knowledge enough to teach others. The girl who slept in the middle of a forest, filled with magic. She lives peacefully with monsters, understands the ancient description, so he is very interested in who Ariel is. The more he learns about her, the more curious he becomes. It's like that curiosity that Mom talked about. He wants to know more. He wants to know everything about Ariel. And in the middle of the night, someone entered his room. When the boy woke up, he was still sleepy. He had read a little yesterday. Well, then he saw that the book was gone. He needs to find the service that is responsible for this room, because he could see the book. Meanwhile, the servant said that he noticed another thing when he entered the room of this prince. Brian believed that he had stolen the book, but he didn't understand why. It was the book that Ariel gave him, so he got angry. They noticed that the boy was looking at them with a murderous gaze. Brian didn't understand at all what to do because he was very scared. His little brother looks like he's about to be killed. He was scared of killing the horse, so he was still afraid. He turned around and immediately ran to his mother, but Cedric screamed at him to give him his book. Then a knight came up to them and asked what had happened. Cedric said that this man stole something from a member of the imperial family. The knight promised to look into it. A probationary period, a pay cut. They could trust him with something heavy, but the boy thought it was strange. If you follow the laws of the imperial palace, the thief's hands must be cut off. The punishment had to be appropriate, so he ordered the knight to do it right now. But the man said that this was an old law. But the boy turned to him and asked if he had to do everything himself. The servant immediately fell to his knees and began to beg for mercy. He began to say that it was an order from His Highness Briannas, but the knight said that he was a useless servant and did what the prince ordered. He did not understand how a servant dared to shift responsibility to the imperial family. The punishment would be carried out on the spot. The knight thought that Cedric was scared. There was also blood around, but the boy said that he was not scared. The maids began to say that he did not blink an eye either, and this scared them very much. They did say he was a bit weird, but now he's completely different from normal people. Then the boy turned to her, and she simply looked at them. He was thinking about how he could return this book. He was not like other children from birth, and this is not the first time he has heard such conversations. Cedric showed almost no emotion and could not distinguish between good and bad. Rather, I didn't know in principle that there was a boundary between these concepts. His mother, who tried to pay attention to his surroundings, was always worried that he would be separated from ordinary people because of his differences, so she held him back, taught him new things. They were together with the cat, and Mom said she liked him because that's how they behave with people they like. This made the boy smile. His mother sat with him, and the cat purred. People don't do that, only cats, so he shouldn't repeat it. When they were walking, the boy told his mother that cats were strange. They were small, covered with soft fur. Mother noticed that they were cute, and he could pet them and call them cute. He could do it the same way she did with him. The boy asked, "What about the flowers?" Because they were also small and soft, and it looked like they needed to be ironed too. The mother smiled and said that it didn't work that way, but the boy didn't see the difference. The woman did not understand at all what to do with this child. He had a long journey ahead of him, but the cat, which was not accidentally encountered on a walk, was dead. Mom said it looked like a horse had run her over. And the boy said, "Cats are cute, you should pet their heads." He tried to pet the cat, but his mother said that he shouldn't. The dead are buried and mourned. The boy was surprised and asked about it again. After that, they buried the kitten together with his mother. Cedric did not quite understand what sadness was. But cats are beautiful flowers too, so he decided to leave them here. Mother said that this was true. He should also continue studying. Cedric doesn't understand yet, but over time he will learn to perceive big emotions. The boy stood out from other children, but his mother still tried to teach him everything. She said that you can't kill people without reason. You can't hurt them. You can't show your talents to others, and must hide until he becomes an adult and build up strength to survive. I need to think before I act. I need to be impulsive. I need to restrain myself. The boy said that he understood, so she could rest. Mother told him that she loved him very much and called him her baby for the last time. She closed her eyes forever full of regret. At the funeral, he heard her tell him that she hoped that one day he would experience all the emotions. And then he will find for himself one person in particular, someone dear enough for him to value him and become greedy. This was her last will. After her death, the whole world turned gray, people without flowers. He was not interested in anything, he was not happy. After his mother died, he became even darker, and he doesn't know what could be dear to him and whether he wants anything at all. With such thoughts, he wandered around the palace, no one paid attention. Then he went out into the forest and found there an old magic circle on the edge of the imperial palace garden. He was curious about this circle in the abandoned part of the garden, where no one goes, and thought it was broken. He senses Ashildr's magic, which is found in artifacts. Magic is beautiful points of light that shimmer in the air, colored lights floating among a sea of gray people. His magic is drawn into the circle, and he begins to act. After that, he found himself in an unfamiliar place and did not understand where he was. He thought he was in the forest. It seemed like Kruger was activated by his magical energy, and he was still a worker, and so he found himself in that forest. Then he came across a house that was right in the middle of the forest. When he walked in, he realized that this was the place where he could truly see colors. The world had always been gray, and only magical dots could be different until he met Ariel, who was not like other people. The magical energy surrounding her glowed brightly, but she was asleep. This girl was incredibly beautiful, and she was literally shimmering. He really wanted to see how she moved. He wanted to see her eyes. He was interested in what color they were. He would see when she woke up, so he decided to wait here. He was so interested, but for some reason she sleeps for a very long time. He thought she was too tired, so he would have to wake her up. He took the stone, but then he remembered that his mother told him not to hit people on the head, so he better go home. He wondered if she was awake, and then the monster started touching him. He turned to the tree and asked if it wanted to say anything, since it looked like he was a monster pretending to be a tree. In the east of the empire, there is a forest that is teeming with monsters, and time has stopped in it. No one could enter there, various legends were composed about it, and that place often appeared in children's fairy tales. Thorny vines and monster trees. It seemed he was in the eastern forest. Perhaps time has stopped, because the forest is filled with Ashildr's magic. The relics in the imperial palace don't come close. He turned to the tree and told it to move, because it could move. He asked who he was, and believed that he was created by the sorceress Ashildr. And she created this forest too. He believed that this tree knew the woman who was sleeping in the house. He thought it was Ashildr. Although that was unlikely, he would have felt magic in her. But there was none at all. Cedric's eyes can detect magic in other wizards' bodies. A magical forest with monsters where time has stopped. An unknown sleeping woman, he had seen something like this before. This is a fairy tale that my mother read to him. There was a forest of monsters where time does not exist. There was a sleeping princess and a prince who had to defeat the monsters to save her. He thought there about how he could wake up the princess, and then remembered that there had to be a kiss. The boy decided that he would succeed, so he quickly went to this house. He kissed her on the forehead, and she thought there that if the prince kissed her, she would open her eyes. He is a prince, so the princess must wake up. But she didn't wake up, which means she's not a princess. The boy had already begun to believe that she was some kind of witch and did not understand how to wake her up, how to make her open her eyes. If he couldn't hit her on the head or strangle her, then a little pain would wake her up, so he decided to stab her in the neck. He had already pointed the knife at her neck and thought that it would be better to cut the skin rather than stab. The blade is sharp, it won't be easy. But then she began to open her eyes. The woman was shocked when she saw a child in front of her who was holding a knife. "He can't take his eyes off me." The woman started saying that the man would wake up if I hit him in the neck. He would only die. Golden, a deep golden color that you could drown in Ariel's eyes, were golden. She started screaming at him to put the dagger away. The boy remembered his mother's words that someday another person would appear in his life who would make him greedy. That day, he desired something for the first time. Cedric turned to Ariel and asked if there was any magic for the smell of blood. She wasn't even surprised by such a question, so she asked him what happened. He said it was just a problem with Brian's servant. He stole the book Ariel gave him to give to his brother. The woman was furious when she heard about this Brian again, and just wanted to curse him. He attacks me personally, only using tricks to stab me in the back. Nothing can be done. You just need to forget about this book. It was a basic textbook, and she will give him another one. But the boy was upset because it was the first book that Ariel gave him, and it belonged to him. He has almost nothing, and he never wanted anything, and therefore he must keep at least such things. He does not want to give them away. So the boy said that he had stolen it, but the woman tried to explain to him that it was the servant's fault. Cedric pointed out that he had cut off his hands as punishment. The woman came up to him and stroked his head, said that everything was right. The boy was surprised because the others were afraid, and she praised. Ariel thought it was better this way than to endure this abuse. The servant repaid in kind, that was true, so she said he was doing well, and also offered to clean the blood off his cheeks. Cedric was surprised that she wasn't afraid of him. Because she used to be afraid, Ariel said that she was never afraid of him. She was just careful, because he pointed a dagger at her. And everything is fine as long as it doesn't harm her. Stains can be removed, but it's difficult with this smell. There should be some herbal soap here that she made recently, but she can't find it. He also thinks that everything is fine until his things are taken away. From the day Ariel opened her eyes, he wanted to take her away, even considered her his own. He likes this forest because there is no one here. No one will take Ariel. She asked him to screw it down because it is difficult for her to wash it. But the boy didn't want this because the soap got into his eyes. She is responsible for attracting the attention of the prince, who had nothing and wanted nothing. So Ariel should not leave him and take herself away from him. The Imperial Palace Magic Tower. They had never seen such magic circles. Who would have thought that such a simple circle existed? They were sure that it definitely worked, so they already asked if they had tried using something similar. The man asked where they got the book, and they thought it belonged to Prince Cedric, but they took it from Brian. Many didn't even know Cedric. He was born from a maid who died, and he often disappears somewhere. Perhaps he discovered an unknown ruin, but they would have known first, so I really want to know where he got it, and who could have given such a valuable book to a principal from power. Ancient ruins are not at all like an ordinary situation period. A man named Ansel Price, the second son of the Price family, apprentice to the chamberlain of the Imperial Palace, informant for the seekers of truth. He said that he came with a report and said that he checked the book. It belongs to a kingdom that disappeared 1,000 years ago, but it is untouched by time. The owner of the book is Prince Cedric, but he doesn't know what to do. The lady asked him to follow him. She did it secretly and acted according to the circumstances. The gentleman understood her, and bowing said that everything would be done. Cedric was understood, and they believed that they were hiding well and were not noticed. While the boy saw everything, he came closer to them, and they were very scared. They started running. He watched this circus. This irritates him at one glance. It is clear that these are the tower's magicians. It's so casually pursued, and maybe Ariel's book was so amazing. Brian is furious that the magicians took his things from him. Because of them, he will have to be more careful moving into the forest, because he doesn't want to get caught out of nowhere. But again, he felt something. Well, when I looked, I didn't notice anyone. He thought there was someone there. It seems he was mistaken, but decided to teleport anyway. The man was glad, because they were not noticed. The mages were so stubborn that he became wary. He did not know that there was a magic circle in the garden, and believed that it was a relic left by a Shildru. Teleportation circle now, it's clear that it can be used. But still, it was interesting to see where His Highness Cedric went. Meanwhile, the boy ran up to Ariel and was very happy to see her. He asked for forgiveness for not coming for 2 weeks. Some countries, people began to surround him. Ariel noted that he said he wouldn't be able to come for a few days, but it ended up lasting for 2 weeks. In the forest, it was hard to understand the passage of time. Outside, Cedric didn't understand at all why they wouldn't leave him alone. It's disgusting. They could at least do it discreetly, but it's too obvious that they are from the tower. It seems like mages still lack social skills, and she said that's just how they are. But that's bad news. If the forest is discovered during the investigation, she will have problems. She said she would tell him about a magic trick that would hide traces. It will help you lose your tail. Cedric was very surprised that such a thing even existed. The wind erases sounds, the earth hides traces. This is how it happens. The boy decided to try and succeeded right away. He was not yet happy, because now they would not find him, and this was just great. Now he can sneak out of the house without being noticed. Ariel said she would give him a book just in case he can study from it if he can't come. Today's lesson also flew by quickly. The time spent in the forest became their shared secret. Living with him in the forest was always fun. In the fall, they played music with magic and danced. In winter, they filled the room with tangerines and ate them while admiring the snowfall. He told Ariel to look because the berries were already sprouting. In the spring, she used magic to create the fruits and berries they picked. And in the summer, they cooled off with rain magic. She told the boy to control the power because it was supposed to be rain, but some ocean came out. In this way, they went through different seasons together. During the night, the lady noticed that the monster looked as if he was waiting for someone, and she believed that he was waiting for Cidi. She told me not to get attached to him because he was a man from the outside world who would disappear in an instant. Over hundreds or thousands of years of their life, it will become a fleeting memory. But the child appeared again when she was alone for a long time. This is her little student, just a little, or a long life you can spend at least a little time with him. The girl noticed that she sat perfectly on him. She didn't even blink an eye at Cedric. He never stopped at the outside world. And the child grew up with him. He found the clothes in a room that had not been used for a long time. He believed that these were the clothes he wore as a child. The clothes that were too big for him fit almost perfectly. Now he can put them on without any problems. After that, Ariel asked how old he was. He is 15 now. Ariel was surprised, and Cedric approached them and noted that he had almost caught up with her height because he had become taller. Ariel pointed out that standing on tiptoes was unfair, so the boy tisked. Cedric noted that he would soon become even taller. This is strange. Something seems wrong. Cedi spent a lot of time in the forest, so he should be a few years behind his peers. But he grew up like this. 15 years really suits his appearance. It's as if the time-stopping magic of this forest doesn't affect him. At night, Ariel approached the magic circle and wondered what she should do. Time should move slowly for all creatures in the forest, but it doesn't work for Cedi. This means that his magical power surpassed the one she used to seal the forest. He is young and cannot reveal his full potential. But when he grows up and learns to use all his power, it is his power that will destroy the seal of the forest. And here she will have to feel it again, but she does not agree to it. This shouldn't happen. This is what she can do, what she must do. The guy didn't understand what was going on, because the magic circle wasn't working. It seemed like it was broken, because he couldn't interact with it in any way. The magical power is transmitted on a large one. It starts as if the flow is blocked somewhere. If this circle is okay, then the problem is in the grave, and something happened to the magic circle on the other side. He didn't understand why this was happening and what was happening. He tried to ask Ariel what was happening. The magic circle wasn't working, so he wanted to know what happened to the forest magic. Ariel knew she didn't have the strength to seal it completely. She could only interfere with the flow to block the movement. He spoke to her because he was sure she could hear him and asked her to open the circle. His voice was leaking, and she could hear it. But it's okay. She knew that one day he would have to leave the forest. It's just that this day came a little early. The house seemed unusually empty, and she cried that it was all because Cedi would not come anymore. One moment of deviation from ordinary life. Now everything is fine. You can forget about everything, so she decided that she would put the books away first. She needed to cheer up already because she thought, because it wouldn't be useful. She needs to take out the dishes and clean up. He took off his clothes and left them in disarray on the floor, which left her confused. She wondered why it was necessary to throw things around when he could have folded them neatly. He seemed to have checked every corner of the house, including even her underwear drawer. His actions seemed completely incomprehensible and slightly frightening. When she looked at his hair, she noticed how beautiful it was. The golden strands shone as if the sun itself had touched them. But his hair was everywhere, and she thought he had shed his fur like an animal. She even thought he was marking his territory, as if claiming his right to this house. It was as if he had left his mark, a sign of his presence. It made her angry and confused at the same time. Now it's time to clean up, get rid of the mess, and all traces of his presence in the house, so that you can start to forget about what happened. She tried to convince herself that everything would be fine. It just took a little time for the emotions to subside, and for her life to return to normal. Cedric will probably lose interest soon since there is nothing left here to hold him back. He would get bored and stop thinking about her. But suddenly she felt dizzy and realized that deep sleep was approaching. She remembered that the house was protected by a cleaning spell. There was no need to clean it up. Time itself would erase the traces. The best thing she could do now was to go to bed and allow herself to get some rest. She hoped that she would wake up in a few years, and by that time, Cedric would have already forgotten about her and given up trying to find her. Then she would be able to stop hearing his voice, which still echoed in her head, calling her endlessly. There had been rumors in the palace for a long time that something was wrong with Prince Cedric. Everyone was sure that he had completely lost his mind as they noticed his strange behavior. It was in the very place that the servants were whispering about that the suspicious magic circle was located. According to eyewitnesses, Cedric spent all his free time near it. The prince sitting in the center of the magic circle desperately called for someone very important to him. His voice was shrill, and he kept repeating one name, Ariel, as if he was obsessed with the thought of bringing her back. One day, the maids accidentally noticed that the prince was moving towards them. They were seized with panic, fear, because no one wanted to become the object of his attention, especially in his current state. Cedric himself could not understand what he should do to see Ariel again. His thoughts wandered in search of an answer, but it seemed that everything was in vain. He felt that the only way to her was through the forest where she should be. On his way to the forest, he encountered a strange man. Their meeting was unexpected and awkward, as Cedric was completely immersed in his thoughts. The stranger, noticing the prince's confusion, immediately apologized for the accidental collision and politely asked if everything was all right with him. However, this gesture of politeness did not find a response from Cedric. The prince coldly motioned for the man to step aside, accompanying his words with a wave of his hand, as if he were just an annoying obstacle in his path. The blond man watching the prince couldn't help but notice how much his condition had worsened. He began to think that a different approach was needed to help, or at least understand what was happening. The prince had accumulated many books about curses, forests of monsters, witches, and time anomalies, but they all seemed useless in finding answers that could help Cedric. They had only a scrap of information about the place, and the only way to get there was with the help of a magic circle. The path was dangerous and mysterious, requiring precise knowledge. Suddenly, he noticed a stack of books that caught his attention. Curiosity grew. What were these volumes, and why were they here? He wanted to solve this mystery. Ariel once mentioned that these books were incredibly valuable, and she instructed him to take care of them so that they would not lose their magical power or become damaged. However, the boy could not understand why he needed to collect so many books at once. After all, it was enough to take one to study. In front of him towered a whole mountain of volumes about magic. It was his homework, to study the circles and learn to remember them. Ariel warned him that she would be busy and he should work on his own. The boy decided to concentrate and put maximum effort into his studies. But suddenly, his thoughts turned to the question, how long did she plan to leave him alone? It seemed she had deliberately blocked the circle so that he could not come to her. He felt a twinge of doubt. Did she really want him to refuse? It didn't seem like a joke at all. It was as if she thought he wouldn't find another way to reach her. But he wasn't going to give up that easily. The boy knew that the forest could be reached, not only through the magic circle. You just need to understand how best to get there and find the optimal path. He was determined to find out because he needed to get into the forest. He understood that this was part of his destiny, and he could not leave the matter unfinished. After long hours of study, he fell asleep at his desk, exhausted and frustrated. The silence in the room was broken only by his steady breathing. The maids, noticing that it had become quiet, began to carefully clean the room. But as soon as they approached his things, he suddenly woke up and grabbed one of them by the hand. He ordered the maids not to touch his things, threatening them. His words were sharp and harsh. The maids froze in fear, not knowing how to react. Cedric reminded them that he could take their hands if they disobeyed. There was no humor in his voice. The atmosphere in the room became tense. It was a terrible moment. One of the maids recalled a rumor that he had chopped off another servant's hand as a child. She prayed that it would not happen. Cedric's behavior was truly alarming. It was said that he had become even stranger lately, and many believed that he had gone mad. On the table lay the book that Ariel had left behind. For him, it was the only trace left. He stared at it for a long time, trying to understand its meaning. The boy could not understand why Ariel left him. She betrayed him, and this fact caused him unbearable pain. The desire to find her grew stronger. He wanted to meet her to settle the grievance, but he knew he couldn't kill her. Then he came up with another plan. He would lock her in a room where there would be only darkness, and no one but him would be able to enter. There she would stay forever. She would not run away, she would not leave him. But first he needed to get to the forest to make his plan come true. This was the first stage of his plan, but how to get there without money and power? This question required an immediate answer, and he began to look for a solution. Cedric knew he had to become stronger, so that no one would dare tell him what to do. He wanted absolute freedom. This was the first point of his plan, to get into the eastern forest of monsters. But he did not know how to do this without power and money, because his situation left much to be desired. He wanted to gain independence more and more. He did not want anyone to tell him how to live and what to do, especially in the current circumstances. At that moment, a blond man approached him. He seemed to understand Cedric's intentions and asked if he was going to the eastern monster forest. The man explained that he saw a magic circle that led there. It was the one the prince used to travel to that place. Cedric didn't understand what they wanted from him. He waved it off, saying that he wasn't working anymore. Ansel clarified that the magical flow was blocked. Despite this, Cedric was sure that he had to get into the forest. He even asked if Ansel knew how to do without the magic circle. Ansel noticed that the forest was full of monsters. To travel there, not just warriors were needed, but a whole army capable of coping with this challenge. The mention of an army made Cedric grin. He knew perfectly well that he had no way of creating one. The man seemed to be mocking him. But then Ansel said something unexpected. He believed that Cedric could become emperor. After the death of the crown prince first in line to the throne, the palace forces were divided, and the struggle for power became fierce. The second prince had the support of the knights. The third, the son of a saint, relied on the temple. The fourth was assisted by his maternal grandfather, the leader of the aristocrats. Cedric chuckled at the idea. With his background, and a mother who was a maid becoming an emperor seemed ridiculous. Ansel reminded that he possesses magic that is unique and inaccessible, even to the most experienced modern wizards. The empire relied on science and technology, and then on magic and magical engineering. This opened up new possibilities. There were people who had influence, but had not yet joined the factions. Ansel promised that he would pass this power on to Cedric. But in return, he asked for one thing: to be allowed to accompany Cedric to the eastern forest. This condition was extremely important to him. There, he said, lay the truth that had been sought for hundreds of years. The secret of a war that had nearly destroyed the world and the force that had ended it. Ansel believed that they could unlock the secrets of the vanished world. His determination impressed Cedric. Although he still did not trust him completely, Ansel introduced himself as an officer second class and a seeker of truth. He assured that he would be Cedric's strength and a loyal ally. He promised to protect him until the end so that he would not regret his decision. Ansel wanted Cedric to trust him. The man added that with the support of magicians and magical engineers, they will be able to achieve success and open the way to their goal. Ansel told how the enemies were defeated, and the nobles submitted, allowing Cedric to win the throne. Now that the preparations were complete, they could head into the forest, where Ariel was hiding. Cedric was surprised that Ansel was talking not only about himself, but also about some other unknown person. Ansel revealed that he was an officer second class and a seeker of truth. His job was to help Cedric. Ansel will be a force for His Highness, and in exchange for this, Cedric will help him in their goals. Ansel promised to protect His Highness to the end, so that he would not regret the decision he had made. Soon, they will open the way with the help of magicians and magical engineers supporting the forces of His Highness. They secured the loyalty of the knights, defeated their enemies, and subjugated the nobles, securing the throne for themselves. Cedric was able to become emperor, and Ansel did everything possible to ensure the success of His Highness. The man reported to His Highness that the preparations were complete as ordered. They can now go to the forest where Ariel is hiding. Ariel woke up and wondered how long she had been asleep. Her thoughts were that a lot could have changed in that time. When she left the room, she noticed that her house was clean and tidy. There are no traces, the seal is intact. The magic circle is still locked, which means it is safe. Ariel noticed that she hadn't seen any monsters in a long time, and hoped that they were keeping a good eye on the place. She felt that everything was okay with her, and that during her sleep, all the emotions that had tormented her before had disappeared. Her heart was no longer broken, but she still felt the need to ask someone for forgiveness. He continued to call her, but now his voice was gone, and she realized that he was no longer there. He was such a child with a beautiful smile and golden hair that had an air of innocence about it. It was her student who looked like a puppy, and she didn't know how many years had passed since they last saw each other. Ariel believed that he was already grown up and hoped that he had left home and found his place in the world of magic. The forest became quiet and peaceful again, as she was used to, and it seemed that everything had returned to normal. But suddenly, she noticed a shadow, and her surprise was no small matter. What was it? She saw a fire in the sky and realized that it was a meteor storm raging over the forest. The wind rose, and with it, stones and leaves flew, disturbing the peace of the forest. The forest began to burn, and Ariel could not understand where this fiery disaster came from. She felt that there was a magician behind this, and his power was great. His attack on the forest was obvious. This mage with powerful magic seemed to have attacked her forest with the aim of destroying its defenses, but she couldn't understand his motives and shouted at him to stop and block his magic. The monsters began to work together to try to protect the path, and Ariel hurried to run, not knowing what to do. She didn't understand the motives of this magician. She needed time, but he had already launched a storm. The wind was so strong that all the trees were struck by lightning, and Ariel became frightened. She knew she should run, but her body wouldn't obey, and she couldn't get up from the ground. In this chaos, it seemed to her that the magician had overdone it, with the power of his magic creating destruction. Cedric approached her and asked if she was okay, explaining that he was the mage who had attacked the forest. He was a man with a proud and arrogant appearance, one who was the master of everything. Ariel couldn't understand why he attacked her, and decided that he wanted to take something from her. He asked her to marry him and called her by name, as if they knew each other. He asked her to marry him after he destroyed part of the forest. It was a strange and dangerous proposal. Ariel thought it was madness, and he had clearly declared war on her, although he didn't realize it. It was strange. A marriage proposal right after the attack. Ariel didn't know where to start because it was their first meeting. She tried to understand who this crazy guy was, standing in front of her, blonde with blue eyes. His face was handsome, and she felt that he looked like someone familiar, but she couldn't remember who. Ariel began to think that if that boy had grown a little, he might have looked like this man in front of her. She couldn't believe it, but Cedric, standing next to her, said that 10 years had already passed. During these 10 years, he missed her very much, and his feelings were deep. She couldn't believe it was the same man in front of her and asked if he was really Cedric. He smiled back. Cedric explained that he simply wanted to see her, and so he destroyed the forest, thinking it was the appropriate way. He added that it was his wedding present and wanted to know her opinion on the matter. Ariel couldn't understand how this could be a gift, especially given the devastation around them. He was surprised that the magic circle was still in place, and she noticed his attention to it. When she turned around, he quickly grabbed her in his arms, not giving her time to think. Ariel tried to understand what was happening and demanded that he let her go, but he ignored her requests. Cedric admitted that he had wanted to do this for a long time, to hold her in his arms and feel close. Ariel was shocked. She couldn't believe that he had been thinking about this all these years, and asked him to let her go. He finally let her go to the ground and took her hands, suggesting that they go to the magic circle. Over the course of 10 years, he had changed a lot, becoming an adult, and was no longer the boy she had said goodbye to. He had not forgotten the forest, and now he realized that she had used his magic to seal the stream. The circle didn't work, but Cedric asked her if she thought it would be possible to use it now. Ariel was puzzled by his questions and didn't know what he was going to do. Cedric said that he had come this far for her, and now he would take her with him wherever he went. Ariel asked what her opinion was, but Cedric replied with a grin that he wasn't interested in her opinion. Everything was confused. He was no longer that happy young man. Now he was an emperor. The wind and snowfall created a gloomy atmosphere until Cedric stopped looking at her. She looked back and saw that the cores of the tree monster and the thorn vine were unharmed and would soon awaken. The books and records she did not need were collected in the house, and she no longer required them. Ariel was finally leaving the forest behind, after many years had passed since the war began. She wondered if everything would be okay with the seal and the other dimension she left behind. Cedric announced that he and the Knight Commander were going to return through the magic circle to the palace, while the other knights were to search the forest. Red, hearing this, stopped him and noticed that he was addressed as His Majesty. Soon they were teleported to the palace, and Ariel had no idea where they were. Ansel greeted His Majesty and reported that everything was ready for their arrival as he had ordered. He thought the journey had gone smoothly, and they were ready to move on. Cedric said that it was now time for them to go to the palace and begin the next stage. He asked about the preparations, and Ansel confirmed that everything had been carried out exactly according to his instructions. They could start right now, and Ariel asked why they were talking to him so politely. She began to suspect that he had become emperor, and Cedric confirmed her suspicions. He couldn't get into the forest through the magic circle, so he gathered his strength and broke through, becoming the emperor. She couldn't believe it was all that easy. To become an emperor. It sounded like a fairy tale. Ariel didn't believe that he was a prince, because he was just a kid with a rich family, and she was surprised how he became an emperor. Cedric said that a lot had happened, and now was the time for other conversations when they were safe. Now they had enough time to discuss everything that had accumulated over the years. It was a chance to talk about things they had kept hidden for a long time, finally opening their thoughts to each other. He showed her the imperial palace and told her that it was a place where they would spend a lot of time together, filling up with memories, creating a new world. Ariel was shocked and immediately began asking a lot of questions, trying to understand how long this would all continue and what exactly was happening in her life. He came closer to her and frankly told her that he became emperor in order to get to the forest where he could meet her and fulfill his plans. He seemed to be hinting that the whole invasion had been done for her. The meteor shower, the thunderstorm, all of that too, he thought was connected to her destiny. He burned down the entire forest. Cedric explained that now that he was emperor, he could make Ariel his empress and show her his world. The girl was shocked. She did not know what to say. Even the servants were a little shocked by such a revelation and did not know how to react to what had happened. She thought it was some kind of nonsense, because she didn't even know the name of the country she found herself in. Everything was alien and incomprehensible to her. The forest was burned, her home was destroyed, and she was left without any shelter, without clarity about what to do now and where to go in this destroyed world. Ariel couldn't understand what kind of marriage proposal was this, in which the partner became homeless, deprived of everything that was before. The emperor showed her the room he had decorated himself, assuring her that Ariel would definitely like it, as he had put a lot of his own effort and feelings into it. Now she could rest a little. But suddenly, Ariel asked him to wait to sort out his thoughts until the full layout came. But then she realized that he had locked her in. Horror gripped her as she realized that she had been locked in a room, and that this was not just an accident, but part of his plans. Now she realized that everything that was happening was a trap, as if she was imprisoned where she could not escape and could not change anything. She didn't understand why the room looked so strange. Everything around was red, from the sofa to the carpet, which resembled blood, creating a sense of anxiety. The red sofa blanket, pillows, curtains, wallpaper. Even the carpet was so bright that it seemed as if everything was soaked in blood, creating an eerie atmosphere. She thought she would go crazy. The strange feeling was so strong that it seemed to her as if all this was revenge for the fact that she had once left him. She thought that this red room might be part of some kind of spell or test, but even with that, her mind was still in disarray. But deciding not to think about it, she simply lay down on the bed, trying to find at least some peace, although the internal discomfort was getting stronger. She didn't understand what was going on, how this man who was once a prince ended up here, and how all this was now connected to her life. Cedric couldn't tell her the truth about his identity because she was a stranger to him, so it was only natural that she didn't know his true nature. However, they found common ground and even began to cheerfully teach each other magic, which helped them overcome tension and establish contact. He turned out to be a man who pays his debts fairly. She raised him, and now she got a knife in the back, which was a hard test for her. They say that black-haired animals cannot be tamed. It was a popular belief that seemed to have a hidden meaning regarding her and his relationship. But Cedric had blonde hair. However, this expression did not refer to the color of the hair, but to the idea that people like animals cannot be tamed. There were many people with black hair in Arendal, and this gave rise to the idea that they could not be tamed, that they could not be controlled or manipulated. Even fair-haired people could be wild and disobedient, and that was what she hated, because such feelings were dangerous and painful for her. When her mind is severely drained, she often has nightmares that further drain her strength and plunge her into an abyss of fear and despair. She realized that there was no one around, but she still thought about how to find at least someone who could understand and support her in this situation. She believed that someone had to survive, at least someone. It was her wish that all this would not be in vain, that her efforts would not be in vain. She heard voices saying that all this was because of His Highness, but she did not understand why everything was happening this way and what to do about it. Ariel was horrified and couldn't believe what was happening. Suddenly, someone appeared in front of her, and she couldn't understand what it meant. She didn't want to believe it, but when she came closer, she hugged the one in front of her, realizing that it was her Daniel, whom she had been waiting for so much. She burst into tears, not knowing what to do. Everything that once was now lost, and she could not understand how to continue living in this new world. Everything was lost, and she felt completely alone. But when she opened her eyes, she realized that it was just a dream, a nightmare that was haunting her. It was just a dream, and this room will always be filled with nightmares that haunt her and keep her in constant fear. Cedric sat next to her and asked who Daniel was. He didn't know how her soul was suffering, and it was a strange question for him, which shook her. Ariel was very scared and began to nervously ask what he was talking about. At that moment, she began to fall, but Cedric managed to catch her. Cedric hoped that Ariel was okay. He was worried about her condition, and he couldn't help but worry because his feelings were deep. He wanted to be sure that she was okay. Ariel reported that she seemed to be feeling fine, but her words did not reassure Cedric, who continued to worry about her. He was still wary. Despite her words, Cedric asked again who Daniel was, because he had already asked about it before he was trying to understand what was hidden behind this name. Ariel replied that she didn't know him and asked him to move away. She couldn't understand why she was so hard to push away. Her heart was beating faster with each passing moment. Cedric was surprised by her strength. He didn't know how she had become so strong. He noticed how his chest was being squeezed hard and her heart was beating wildly. Ariel was confused by what was happening and couldn't understand what was happening. Her head was in turmoil. She couldn't explain her feelings logically. There was a strange atmosphere between them, and Ariel didn't want to believe what was happening. Everything seemed ridiculous, but she couldn't get rid of the strange feelings. Suddenly, the Emperor, with a smile on his face, lifted her into his arms. The gesture was unexpected, but it seemed strangely warm and cozy to her at the moment. After that, he gently returned her to her place, saying that she should not overexert herself, and it would be better to sit. He was concerned about her well-being. Ariel hid a lot, and apparently, she wasn't going to reveal her secrets. He knew she wouldn't tell him anything important, but Cedric was sure that one day she would reveal everything. That moment was inevitable, and he was willing to wait, knowing that time was on his side. The Emperor was willing to wait because he knew they had time. He thought Ariel was very tired, and this feeling was hard for her. She even started having nightmares. Ariel thought that there could be nothing normal in this crazy place, and it was a test for her. But something was wrong with this room. Rel screaming declared that the room was created to take revenge on her. It seemed insane. She felt like someone was trying to drive her crazy. Everything around her seemed dark, and she couldn't find any other explanation. Cedric, smiling reservedly, said that all this was done to make Ariel happy. He tried to calm her down despite her anxiety. He reminded her that she loved red, so the room was filled with her favorite color. It was his innocent idea she should appreciate it. Ariel remembered walking with him when he talked about the many red flowers around. It added warmth and a bit of nostalgia to her thoughts. He even noticed that her clothes were red too, which seemed to confirm that she loved this color very much. He wanted to make her happy in this way. Ariel remembered telling him that red was her favorite color. Everything seemed simple and warm in those days, and that moment was dear to her. She remembered this conversation and hoped that this was not the only reason why everything was red. Otherwise, it would look strange and ridiculous. Everything was painted red, and it seemed strange. She couldn't find an explanation for it, especially in a situation like this, where everything was not so simple. In despair, she screamed that he didn't understand what he was doing and called him a bastard. It was too complicated and absurd for her to comprehend. Cedric decided to make this decoration a few days ago because he thought everything should be red. He wanted to create an atmosphere for Ariel. Ansel thought that Cedric was going to lock the Iron Dragon in this room, but the Emperor said that it was all for Ariel and it was important to him. The room was not for revenge. He decorated it for her to show his care and love. It was an act of attention and deep feelings. On the other hand, the room's decor did look strange and even a little disgusting. It wasn't what she expected. Ariel began to demand that Cedric redecorate the room to make it more normal. She could not accept such changes without modification. Cedric admitted that he didn't know her preferences, and that was the main problem. He didn't know what she wanted, and that led to misunderstandings. He promised to change it a little if she didn't like it that much. He was willing to compromise for her convenience and comfort. Ariel asked to remove the lock from the doors, but Cedric explained that it was for her safety. He tried to convince her that it was for the best. She couldn't understand why a lock was important if the door was locked from the outside anyway, but he insisted that it had to be that way for her protection and peace. Cedric suggested that she bathe and eat first, and while she was gone, he would fix up the room's decor to make it more comfortable for her. Ariel was surprised by his offer and wondered how he had managed to change so much. He had become a different person, and this confused her. He asked Lady to take her to the bathroom. Ariel was about to ask to be taken back to the forest, but decided to accept the offer instead. Cedric laughed, realizing how easy it was to distract Ariel. He knew her weaknesses and used them to his advantage. He noticed that there was too much red, and Ariel didn't like it. Ansel promised that he would fix it and the room would look different soon. The ladies did not understand what kind of woman was with him. She did not know the rules of behavior and looked a little strange to them, which added to their questions. One of the ladies asked her to watch her language because she was the Emperor's guest. Her words had to be more careful, otherwise there would be problems. The lady noted that Ariel should have heard that the Emperor was going to make her Empress. It was a big statement for everyone. The maids thought it was stupid because Cedric had Rosemary and Violet Ariel was a strange person, an alien figure. They discussed how no one had seen this girl and did not understand what she was doing here. The maids considered her a stranger and of little importance to the palace. Someone said that she doesn't understand whose side she's on, and she better not interfere in palace affairs. Otherwise, she won't be able to avoid problems. The maids warned her that it would be better to keep her mouth shut if she wanted to stay in this palace and not end up in an unpleasant situation. One of the maids said that she did not want to be killed because she had gotten involved with this man. They did not trust the Emperor and his intentions. One of the ladies declared that she would take the guests' clothes and that she should take care of the expression on her face so as not to betray her excitement. The lady thought her colleague was a coward because she was too worried and afraid. She didn't understand what was so scary about this situation. After some small changes, the room became more attractive. With the red accent, it got an interesting look instead of looking like a dark, haunted room. Ariel bathed and ate, but she still didn't feel well. Although her body was satisfied, her mind remained restless and tense. She was in the very heart of the imperial palace, and this place was increasingly oppressive to her. There was no freedom, no peace here. To get back to the forest, she had to go through the magic circle, or find another way. But she doubted she could find a way out. Ariel thought that she might not be able to get out of this room, and the feeling was overwhelming. She felt like a prisoner. He kept watching her, and she couldn't get used to his constant presence. Her freedom was limited, and it bothered her a lot. Ariel was surprised by his growth and asked when he became so big. He used to be small and cute, but now he has changed beyond recognition. Cedric noticed that Ariel seemed to like children and that he had grown up to be more attractive to her. This confused her again. Ariel didn't understand what he meant. It sounded like he was accusing her of something weird, but she couldn't figure out what exactly he was talking about. Cedric claimed he was telling the truth. She had dumped him when he was almost as tall as she was. This was a revelation to her. Ariel began to explain that it wasn't his height, it was his magic. She would rather he never grew up, and that was the only way. She couldn't understand why the conversation had gone in such a strange direction, and tried to change the subject to avoid further awkward moments. She decided that she would not give in to his provocations, because it was all a game, and he was pretending she was not going to fall for his tricks. He started playing on her emotions as if he was crying crocodile tears. But she knew it was a deception to manipulate her feelings. Ariel understood what he was doing, but she couldn't ignore his beauty. Her mind couldn't resist his charms. Despite her desire to be strong, she started thinking about how to calm him down, how to comfort him, how to wipe those tears from his face. It was bothering her, and she didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Cedric asked if he should get rid of everyone. His question was unexpected, and she couldn't understand its meaning. Ariel didn't understand what he was talking about, but Cedric explained that he meant all the little children she liked so much. By this, he meant that by getting rid of everyone younger, he would be able to completely capture her attention. Her gaze would be focused only on him. Ariel felt confused and didn't know what to say. His words stunned her, and she couldn't find the right words to express her feelings. She cried out for him not to do anything rash and to leave the children alone. Her voice was desperate, trying to reach his mind. Ariel assured him that she had no intention of leaving him, even if he thought she did. After that, he hugged her, as if he found comfort in her words. Deciding that was enough for today, he did not do anything else. However, Ariel did not understand what exactly he meant. He wanted to stay, but decided to put it off until tomorrow. He knew he had to tread carefully and promised himself they would figure it out later. Ariel couldn't believe that after all that had been said and done, he would just leave. She was left confused, unsure of how to react. When he came out, he used magic to seal her in the room. The spell was cast instantly, but she failed to notice. Ariel didn't even suspect that there was a spell on the door that kept her inside. She remained in the dark. She had no magical abilities, but she had deep knowledge. However, it was not enough to overcome the barrier. The Emperor thought it best to keep her under strict control so that she would not even think about escaping. Her freedom was limited to a minimum. Ariel was confused. She didn't understand what was happening and why he was reacting so sharply to everything around him. He left without explaining anything, leaving her completely bewildered. She felt lost, unable to find a reason for his behavior. He decided that he would not let her leave again. A plan was born in his mind to make sure that she stayed with him forever. After becoming emperor, Cidi did everything to turn the palace into a cage for Ariel. She was supposed to belong only to him. She would not be allowed to leave, even if she died. She would meet here. He wanted her completely locked within his control. Her tears could flow endlessly, but she would still remain inside this golden cage. At this time, research was underway in the monster forest. Scientists discovered something unusual, but they couldn't figure out what it was. They began to think that it was an ancient seal of great power. However, this was not a task they could solve on their own. They lacked the knowledge and experience to make such a discovery. They understood that an accidental breach of this seal could lead to disaster. The situation became increasingly alarming. It was decided to immediately report the discovery to the Emperor. They reported that a powerful sealing spell had been discovered. The spell bore traces of the work of the great sorceress. Ashildr research was halted due to the lack of a mage of her caliber. It looked as if something terrible was about to break out of this seal. The feeling of anxiety grew stronger. The seal resembled a dark hole emitting ominous energy. Meanwhile, the maids were picking out clothes for Ariel in the palace. The head maid personally took charge of organizing her room until another worker could be found. She was temporarily responsible for all her needs. If Ariel needed anything, she was to ask either the head maid or any of the servants. She was given a full list. She was also given a guide to the palace guests, so that she could orient herself to her capabilities. After wishing them good night, they left. Ariel studied the manual and realized that she could only visit the designated places. She was overcome by the thought that her freedom was limited. She began to wonder if he was trying to lock her away for good, but she decided not to jump to conclusions so as not to worry in advance. When she started reading the manual, she was surprised to notice that she did not understand what was written. The language was completely unfamiliar to her. She felt irritated. She did not understand how it was that the language she had used before was no longer available to her. The new alphabet and changes in language came as a complete surprise to her. The world around her changed while she was in the forest. Civilization had moved forward, and now it could not adapt to the new reality. The reason was its isolation from society. The book she received was written in an ancient language that had long since lost its relevance. This explained her confusion. Cidi, as a member of the imperial family, was taught modern scripts, but Ariel did not know even the basic elements of the new language. She realized that her knowledge was a thing of the past, and now she looked illiterate. This was especially humiliating for her. The great sorceress, renowned for her intelligence, was now unable to read simple text. This was a heavy blow to her. It was a total disgrace. Ariel decided to ask the maid for help, but she didn't even know how to explain her problem. She considered how best to express her thought, so as not to be misunderstood. It was not easy for her to admit her weakness. Perhaps she should have simply said that she couldn't read the language, but she was afraid that would put her in an awkward position. She knew other languages, but this one was beyond her reach. Trying to explain herself, she searched for the right words to avoid misunderstandings. Approaching the alphabet table, she began to decipher the symbols. It seemed to her that with each step, she was getting closer to understanding. But the maid suddenly screamed, forbidding her to touch this thing. Her reaction was sharp and categorical. The maid probably thought Ariel wasn't polite enough to understand the rules, but she never explained why the item was forbidden. Ariel, in turn, decided to clarify why this was so important. Her question sounded calm, but with a hint of bewilderment. The maid started shouting that this was the legacy of the kingdom of Arendal, which existed 1,000 years ago. And they say that these ornate and wise records were left by the great sorceress Ashildr. She said that it was a very precious relic and didn't understand what they would do if a treasure of that level was damaged. The girl was shocked to learn that 1,000 years had passed, and her work was now called wisdom, and he was called a relic. This left her in complete shock. Ariel said that this is not the case at all, and she stated with complete confidence that this is clearly not true. She is sure that the situation is far from what it is presented as. Everything turned out to be much simpler, since it turns out that she is that very Ashildr, and she has something interesting to tell. These mysterious writings that were on the walls were random drawings made out of boredom during magic lessons. They meant nothing. Ariel sighed and didn't know where to start, not understanding how to explain the whole situation to her, because it was completely ridiculous. It had been a whole 1,000 years since the world had nearly been destroyed. And if that was true, then the maid had been mistaken in her statements. The maid expressed dissatisfaction, claiming that she had a limit to her rudeness, despite the fact that she was not familiar with the rules of etiquette. She was shocked that she had been so poorly received and could not understand why she was being met with hostility. It was a real blow to her. The maid clearly relaxed, and Ariel believed that if a servant allowed herself to raise her voice, it meant she did not understand boundaries. The woman loudly declared that they were responsible for the relic that was kept in the imperial palace, and everyone who did not understand anything should listen to her. Ariel was surprised by this, noting that the maid's mannerisms were completely strange and ridiculous for a servant in such a palace. Ariel noted that she wondered who taught these maids to look down on guests like that without showing proper respect. The atmosphere suddenly changed, and the maid's gaze became arrogant like that of a high noble, which looked very strange to Ariel. The maid couldn't understand why she was so tense, because she considered Ariel to be some kind of country bumpkin and didn't expect such behavior. If Ariel is a country bumpkin, then it's not clear where she got her elegance and gratitude from. Ariel grinned at her. Ariel asked if the maid would stand like that any longer, causing the woman to immediately begin apologizing, falling to her knees. The maid began to beg for forgiveness, not understanding what exactly she should be forgiven for, but she understood that she needed to do it. Ariel noticed that the maid seemed proud and arrogant to her, not accepting the blame for her behavior, but still asking for forgiveness. She also said that the palace she found herself in was strange, and that it was hard to believe that the servants there were allowed to shout at the guests. This confirmed that respect and understanding in this palace were at a low level, since even the workers looked down on the guests. The maid didn't stop continuing to apologize to Ariel, although she didn't understand the reason why her behavior caused such a reaction. Ariel stated that if they were ignoring her as the emperor's guest, then that meant they were ignoring Cidi as well, which upset her greatly. She had known Cedric since he was a child, before he was a ruler, and had always seen his weaknesses, which led to his humiliation. When he became ruler, she hoped that the situation would change, and thought that he would take power into his own hands and start acting. Ariel believed that he should be angry, because in order to keep the throne, one must be able to manage and show strength and not forgive weakness. She was surprised that he still forgave such disrespect, despite his character, which again confirmed her doubts about his resolve. She came to the conclusion that he didn't seem to care at all what others thought of him, and he genuinely didn't give a damn about what was going on. At that moment, the emperor approached them, noticing Ariel, and asked what was going on, not understanding what had led to this situation. He noticed her among all those present, and immediately realized that she was clearly unhappy about something, which drew his attention to what was happening. Cedric took off his jacket and put it on Ariel, saying that she shouldn't go out in pajamas because it doesn't meet the standards. However, Ariel began to argue with him, claiming that it was not that important at the moment, and that there were more important issues to deal with. She noticed that the services in his palace were completely out of line with her expectations, and they clearly did not meet the standards of decency. Of course, Cedric might not care about such things, but she reminded him that he had to educate his servants so as not to disgrace his name. Ariel understood that he might be powerless, but she couldn't forgive such an attitude, especially in the imperial palace, where there should be different standards. She asked him what he would do if this attitude began to spread to other people and his authority was threatened. Cedric was struck by her words about him being a powerless emperor, and this made him think about his position and the situation in the palace. He turned to the servants and realized that now such misunderstandings could play into his hands, and decided to use this to his advantage. The emperor said that he was indeed powerless, and so he asked Ariel to help him so that she would become his protector in this matter. His words sounded like a request, and he became like a small dog, which made Ariel feel tender and sympathetic towards him. The servants clearly wanted Ariel not to fall for the emperor's tricks, because they did not trust his behavior and suspected his manipulation. But the girl said that she agreed with him and that he could trust her. She decided to support him despite all the strangeness of what was happening. After this, the emperor asked what made her rush to leave, and Ariel explained that she was simply thinking about her situation. She admitted that she didn't know the letters, and that it embarrassed her greatly. Cedric didn't know either, and perhaps he would teach her, which gave her hope. Ariel admitted that she couldn't read some of the words in the manual, which surprised Cedric, and he asked again to make sure. Then he realized that she couldn't read, and although it looked strange, he still realized that she couldn't read those particular letters. Ariel was quick to point out that this wasn't true. She just didn't know the letters, but she still hoped that he would stop looking at her with that smile. She expressed her displeasure when she noticed that he continued to look at her with a smile as if it was some kind of joke, even though she knew the Arendal script. Cedric repeated that Ariel was illiterate, which irritated her because she thought it was supposed to be a joke and not the truth. She understood that before he would have done everything for her, but now he laughed at her literacy, which showed his easy attitude towards her problems. She said that if he really wanted her to learn, he should do the same as before and teach her a new language. But Cedric replied that she had left him, and now it was not so simple, which made Ariel a little confused. The girl said that he could teach her again, but Cedric replied that she had already left him, and this was a real disappointment for him. After Cidi told Ariel that she didn't have to study, she was horrified. She couldn't believe her ears and asked repeatedly, trying to understand what was happening. In response, the emperor said that the only way out was to rely on her. He strongly recommended that the girl go and rest, giving her time to think. He also noted that it would be better if she simply stayed where she was, and did not bother him, a decision that seemed most reasonable to the emperor at the time. The emperor closed the door behind her and left her in the room. Ariel's scream followed him, calling him an ungrateful bastard, in rage, not holding back her emotions. Ariel was sure that there was a misunderstanding. She thought that the emperor had no power, and was worried about it, considering him weak and incapable. At this point, they wondered whether they should explain the situation to her. However, the emperor believed that explanations were useless, since Ariel would not take it seriously anyway. Cedric knew that Ariel was an unusual person. She had an energy that could make many people bow down, and this caused him some concern. He sensed something sublime about her that was at odds with her appearance. It was as if she was used to standing above everyone else, confident in her own strength. Cedric knew from the start that she was special. Perhaps her status was much higher than he initially thought, although it was hard to notice as a child. He was shocked that the maid dared to insult her. It was a surprise to him because he knew that her position was much more than a simple servant. The woman quickly justified herself, stating that this was not so. She claimed that she was only trying to explain something to the guest, but her words had no power in front of the emperor. The emperor was furious. He was outraged that the maid did not listen to Ariel's words, ignoring her importance. He did not understand how she could do such a thing. He brought her as a future empress, expecting respect, and the maid did not show it. The woman confessed that she had committed a mortal sin, realizing her mistake. The emperor calmly remarked that if she admitted her guilt, she must be punished. His words left no room for doubt, and the maid understood what awaited her. The woman began to scream and beg for mercy, hoping that she could be forgiven. She fell before the emperor, but he remained cold and silent. She begged for forgiveness, but the emperor remained silent. Everyone present remained silent, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. No one knew what to do in this situation. The emperor noticed that it was too noisy and said that re-education was necessary. He felt an aura of disrespect towards Ariel and could not ignore it. Batman promised to look into the matter, and the palace was soon in total disarray. Everyone was at a loss as to what would happen next. The emperor brought a woman who was introduced as being from the circle of magicians. She was sloppily dressed with tangled hair, but her presence was not accidental. She looked dirty and disgusting, but since she was brought by the emperor, it meant that her position was important in some way. This caused surprise and bewilderment in everyone. The woman did not have a proper upbringing. She could not read, did not know even the most basic things, which caused even more bewilderment among those around her. Many did not understand how she was able to seduce the emperor. It was a real shock for everyone, because they believed that the emperor preferred noble women and noble ladies. Rumors began to circulate around the palace that the emperor preferred women with dirty hair and sloppy clothes. These rumors quickly spread among the people. The emperor was known for his unusual preferences. He seemed to avoid beautiful women, choosing those who were not up to par in appearance. Rumors about the emperor's preferences spread rapidly. Some condemned his choice, while others were simply puzzled. It became a topic of discussion in the palace. Boutique designer Ariel greeted Ariel and introduced herself. She offered to create the most stylish and fashionable dresses for her, starting with taking her measurements. Ariel was confused and didn't understand why this was necessary, especially so early. She didn't know how to react to a proposal that seemed completely unnecessary to her. The emperor said that Ariel needed clothes for life in the palace. He insisted that she quickly choose several outfits for different occasions. However, she was against it, saying that she had enough ready-made outfits and did not need to waste time on new ones. She was sure that she did not need anything special. The emperor, however, did not agree with this, and the maid began to talk about finally seeing the girl from the rumors. This again attracted the attention of everyone present. The designer suggested focusing on choosing designs from the brochures. She suggested that Ariel choose the ones she liked, so that they could create something in her style. They suggested creating something modern that would suit her taste. Modern dresses were very different from those worn in the past. The designer began discussing what colors would suit her look, for example, for black hair or golden eyes, which Ariel had. She also suggested considering popular colors. Lace has become popular lately, and the designer suggested using it in the design. Suddenly, the emperor said that Ariel likes the color red, which surprised everyone. Ariel was surprised by his words. The designer also looked at the emperor with bewilderment, not knowing why he decided this for her. Ariel felt even more uncomfortable. Of all the flowers, Ariel preferred the hydrangea. When she said this, the emperor smiled, and she felt annoyed, because again, he managed to learn something about her taste. Ariel was annoyed and asked the emperor not to interfere with her choice. She said that she did not want him to decide for her and asked him to stop pressuring other people. He kept thinking that she would choose a dress with red hydrangeas. She was surprised and asked him how he could know her preferences, and he just smiled. Ariel was shocked when she learned that he was actually going to order a dress of his own design. She was sure that the emperor was trying to create expensive trash. Ariel asked him to stop interfering and leave the matter to the professionals. She was sure that they would do everything right without his unnecessary interference. The emperor tried to say something else, but Ariel would not listen to him. She was determined and said that she would not tolerate any objections from him. The maids began to comment on their conversation. They jokingly remarked that it sounded like a command for training a dog, which made them smile, although not without some bewilderment. They did not feel embarrassed, but decided that such thoughts were best left behind. After all, no one should treat the emperor as some kind of pet. Although it looked like Ariel considered him a pet, the emperor didn't mind at all. He simply accepted her attitude towards him, which suited him. Rumors quickly spread among the palace servants and courtiers. Everyone began to discuss the strange relationship between the emperor and Ariel, considering it something unusual. One of the servants remarked that the emperor really did resemble an obedient puppy, and this did not cause him any objections or embarrassment. Everyone began to suspect that Ariel might be his owner, although no one dared to say it out loud. The idea seemed too unusual for them. Rumors about the palace continued to spread. Everyone was talking about how the emperor was under the control of his mistress in this place, and this surprised everyone. These rumors quickly spread, and people began to discuss Ariel and the emperor's relationship. This happened more than once, and the second wave of rumors seemed even louder. Ariel realized that all this could drive her crazy. Her attitude towards the emperor became more and more strange because she treated him like a child. Ansel noticed that her behavior was increasingly reminiscent of a relationship with an animal. Everyone began to perceive her as an illiterate woman who could not even read. Ariel didn't understand where such rumors were coming from. She was becoming more and more like a trainer, and it made her think about running away from this place. She began to think about escape, not knowing how to get out or where to go. She decided that the only option was to hide as quickly as possible. She had no money and could not go anywhere, but she decided that before escaping, she needed to see the magic circle in the palace to understand how it worked. The emperor was surprised to hear her request. Ariel noted that he knew she could not use magic as her power was too weak for it. Cedric thought about it and agreed, noting that her desire to test the magic circle was quite logical. He offered to show it to her if she was really interested. Ariel was surprised, but agreed. She wanted to look at the magic circle to assess its condition, even knowing that she couldn't use it. The emperor agreed and said that he had something he wanted to show her. It sounded mysterious, and she couldn't help but feel curious. Ariel didn't understand what was going on. She was confused by how the palace was turning into something like a forest of monsters, and she couldn't figure out where all this was coming from. She didn't understand at all what was happening in the palace. There were many questions in her head, and she tried to figure out what kind of strange place had become her new reality. The emperor noticed immediately that the monster recognized him as soon as their eyes met. His reaction left no doubt, not just recognition, but a deep connection, as if the past had come to life in an instant. In the midst of the raging fire, the emperor went to the tree around which the battle was raging. He tried to calm it, speaking carefully as if he were communicating with an ancient spirit living in that old trunk. After everything that happened, they hugged and the monster visibly relaxed. Having taken the core, he shared his magical energy. Now, thanks to their connection with the forest, the idea of having them guard the palace's magic circle seemed especially good. 9. Ariel couldn't understand what this monster saw as so valuable in that guy, who kept throwing lightning and meteorites, creating chaos and destruction around him. Although he struck, he clearly did not aim for the monster's core. Almost immediately, he healed the wound he had inflicted, as if to show that his goal was not destruction at all. Gradually, Ariel realized that there was a long-standing friendship between them, which had connected them since childhood. However, it must be admitted, they really succeeded in protecting the circle. No one dared to approach, because the very thought of it caused fear in everyone. This circle, connected to the forest, was located south of Arundel, hidden from prying eyes, but important to their magical world. Since the circle was now here, it became apparent that the imperial palace was built on the site of the old kingdom, which helped Ariel figure out their current location. However, she still could not understand why the circle ended up in the palace. After all, its coordinates were fixed, which meant that transfer was simply impossible. This circle was believed to be an ancient relic once found in a simple farmer's field. Several generations ago, the emperor built a palace near it to study its magical properties. Ariel concluded that this emperor must have been very into magic. He was most likely a rich fanatic, ready to do anything for the sake of his research. Cedric noted that no one had ever found out the purpose of this magic. So the circle was abandoned, and he accidentally ended up in the forest where their paths crossed. When he looked at her, Ariel felt slightly embarrassed, realizing that he was probably remembering their past. She explained that time passed differently in the forest. However, despite the passage of millennia, it looked much better than she could have expected. Over these thousands of years, the circle continued to operate as if it were protected from destruction, remarkably surviving to this day. She was curious about what kind of magic was behind this preservation. She assumed that it was a spell that was not created by her, but by someone else. The magic apparently belonged to the wizard Akelnar, a colleague in the laboratory in the forest with whom she had once shared her research space. She wondered if she should ask him what formula he had used. His spell was still active, even after 1,000 years. Cedric added that he had not noticed many of the oddities of the forest before, although now they seemed obvious. The forest was filled with magical anomalies, such as a house that always remained clean with food and comfortable conditions recovering from destruction. Ariel didn't immediately understand what he was talking about, but she became increasingly convinced that the forest really was full of mysteries. The house seemed to have a spell of status quo. Even Ariel herself did not age, no matter how many years passed. She remained the same as the day they first met, as if time had stood still for her. However, Cedric was growing up and getting older, which put Ariel in an awkward position because she didn't know what to answer. The magic of the forest seemed to hold back time, and it was clearly connected to a powerful sorceress named Ashildr. Despite her lack of magical powers, Ariel was extremely skilled in magic and spells, causing Cedric to doubt her true identity. There were times when he suspected that Ariel was Ashildr, although she herself never confirmed it. Since then, he has been searching for information about the mage Akelnar, who, as it turns out, was active around the same time as Ashildr. Akelnar left behind only a few materials, but they were enough for Cedric to understand the differences between the two archmages' legacies. However, Akelnar's magic was also linked to the forest, which raised even more questions. Ariel, confused, asked if this was really true, since her companion was a man named Daniel. Daniel was the owner of the shirt that Cedric found, adding a new mystery to his investigation. He began to suspect that Akelnar and Daniel might be the same person, which shocked Ariel. It became clear to her that he had already unraveled her secrets. Her connection with Ashildr and Daniel, now he was waiting for her reaction. In order not to give herself away, the girl decided to pretend, but Cedric switched to something else. He said that Ashildr and Akelnar were possibly lovers. When he asked her opinion, Ariel brushed it off, calling his theory madness and a huge mistake. She couldn't understand how rumors could distort the facts so much. This version of events seemed absurd to her. In fact, Akelnar, like Daniel, was her brother, which made the rumors even more ridiculous. Ariel was praying in the temple when she suddenly felt something strange, like an ominous energy was gathering around her. It was a prophecy. She felt an ominous aura hanging over the imperial palace. Few could believe that the cold and distant emperor would ever communicate with a woman, but rumors grew. On the training ground, they discussed ridiculous stories about how this woman would become an empress. Ariel met Lady Violet, a saint who heard the voice of God and was a candidate to become empress. Lady Violet was shocked by the emperor's decision to choose someone else, realizing that the palace had begun to change. Daniel Akelnar, Lauderdale, Arundel, was known not only as Prince Arundel, but also as a powerful archmage. He was the eldest of their family, 2 years ahead of his sister. They looked like ordinary brother and sister. The only thing that made them stand out from the crowd was their incredible genius in magic. They both reached the heights of mastery and became archmages, whose abilities amazed even the most experienced sorcerers. The brother and sister devoted all their free time to magical entertainment, playing with fire and water. Daniel often used hellfire, while his sister preferred to summon snowstorms. Their games resembled duels between two great magicians competing in the skill and power of their spells. However, these games often turned into something more than just a demonstration of abilities. Despite their affection for each other, the sister was irritated by her brother's actions. She often gave in to her emotions, and then not only magical blows were used, but also physical ones. Often these arguments ended in a fight, and one day the she-bear, as she was sometimes called, attacked Daniel again. He could not understand what was so annoying to her and why she was constantly pulling his hair. The girl screamed, accusing her brother of stupidity, since in her opinion, using the hellfire of the 6 circles was not just a mistake, but outright madness. Their arguments quickly escalated into full-on hand-to-hand combat until someone intervened to break them up and end yet another conflict. Usually, it was their sister, Serenia Lashella, Elsbeth Arundel, the crown princess of the kingdom, who would sternly question why two magically gifted people were constantly fighting over their powers. Serenial did not simply interfere, but also established order. She punished them by sending them to prison for 3 days, so that the brother and sister had a chance to realize their mistakes and reflect on their behavior. Despite their unusual abilities, their quarrels seemed quite ordinary. The older sister acted as a peacemaker, and their family had a hint of the mundane mixed with magic. But in the future, these moments were just memories. She would never see them again. The emperor looked at her silently, not revealing his thoughts. Then he decided to find out who Akelnar and Ashildr were to each other. This question troubled him, and he wanted to know the truth. When Ariel heard his words, she exclaimed that she knew nothing about it. She tried to steer the conversation away by suggesting that he look for answers in the notes. She was irritated that the emperor continued to pester her with questions Ariel asked him to stop, but she knew he wouldn't back down that easily. She began to realize that the situation was becoming dangerous for her. The emperor had clearly noticed something, and it could lead to undesirable consequences. In the forest where she was with a man named Daniel, she realized that the emperor had guessed the truth. Daniel and Akelnar were apparently the same person. Moreover, he could reveal her secret, that she was Ashildr. The thought of this terrified her because she did not want anyone to know about it. 1,000 years passed, and Ariel became someone who lived for centuries. Despite this, she did not want to be considered an old woman. Although it seemed like a small thing, it was important to her. Her past was too painful, and she couldn't stay where it could come out. Ariel decided that the best thing for her to do was to leave the imperial palace and return to the forest. There she felt safer knowing that the familiar environment would protect her from danger. However, Ariel knew that leaving the palace would not be easy. The emperor would hardly agree to let her go without objections, and perhaps would even try to prevent her from leaving. She began to think about how to bypass his plans and avoid unnecessary conflicts. After weighing her options, Ariel decided to try to resolve the situation verbally. She believed that open conversation could ease the tension. Perhaps if she explained her intentions, the emperor would stop putting up barriers. But when Ariel opened the door, she suddenly saw the emperor standing right in front of her. He was standing there as if he was waiting for her to come out. His voice was calm, but it was obvious that he was surprised by her quicker reaction than expected. Ariel was startled, feeling uneasy under his intense gaze. She exclaimed that he was too persistent, hinting at his stubbornness. She found it incredible that he had stood patiently outside the door all this time. The emperor, without losing his composure, replied that he was waiting for her to calm down and be ready to talk. Upon hearing this, Ariel said bluntly that she had decided to return to the forest, not wanting to remain dangerously close to the palace. She also added that she had no intention of blocking the magic circle that would allow the emperor to visit the forest at any time, thus making it clear that she had no plans to hinder his possible visits. The emperor considered her words. He noted that he did not understand her desire to return to the forest, since Ariel's home, which had once been her refuge, was now gone. His words sounded confident, as if he knew something for sure. Ariel was surprised to hear this statement. She could not believe that her house, protected by a restoration spell, had disappeared. She thought that this was simply impossible because the protection of the house was impenetrable. The emperor explained that the house had been dismantled down to the smallest detail to prevent its restoration. He reported this with the confidence of someone who had personally supervised the complex process. After that, he brought Ariel's things, among which were unique relics. These finds delighted the magicians, who could not hide their interest in the ancient artifacts. Ariel was shocked. She realized that her property had been looted, and this caused her deep indignation. She felt cheated and humiliated, seeing her things in the wrong hands. Outraged Ariel began to shout that such actions were unnecessary and unacceptable. She emphasized that these things were part of her life, and she was not going to part with them. But among the objects, something unusual caught her attention. It was such a strange discovery that Ariel momentarily forgot her anger, concentrating on what lay before her. Her gaze fell on the diary, which contained personal entries. Ariel realized that the meaning of some of the entries could be misinterpreted, and this caused her to change her behavior. She heard the men rejoicing at the find. They began to discuss the notes, trying to make sense of the familiar words written in an ancient language as if it were an important text. Ariel felt a sense of unease as she recognized the names of Akelnar and Ashildr. Among the words, she realized that mentioning these names could lead to undesirable conclusions. The men assumed the journal belonged to two archmages and hoped that the entries would help reveal important details about their relationship. Their interest in the find only increased. The name Akelnar was repeated especially often, which led them to assume that the diary was a journal recording his achievements. They were already making hypotheses based on what they had read. Ariel knew their assumptions were wrong. It was her personal diary, and she couldn't let them know the true contents. A feeling of helplessness washed over her. It was painful for her to see her personal notes become the subject of other people's discussions. She had no idea how to stop what was happening and get her diary back. The Emperor, noticing Ariel's reaction, was intrigued. He did not expect the notes to be so important and decided to find out why they excited her so much. As he came closer, he expressed his opinion that Akelnar and Ashildr were a couple. This strengthened his confidence in the correctness of his assumptions. Ariel was shocked, but to avoid revealing the real truth, she evasively agreed that she did not like Akelnar. This answer was not easy for her. The Emperor, misinterpreting her words, suggested discussing the contents of the diary in more detail. He was determined to find out all the details and clarify their relationship. He pointed to a word next to Akelnar's name, guessing it meant beloved. This caused a stir among those present, heightening their interest. In fact, the word was a curse word that Ariel used to call him a bastard. Her diary contained angry entries reflecting her feelings during this period. Ariel felt ashamed, realizing that they had found notes she had made when she was 5 years old. It was truly humiliating for her because her childhood emotions were on public display. The Emperor spoke of Akelnar again and asked why the diary was so important to Ariel. He also tried to find out what connection she had with Ashildr. Ariel could barely speak, but she still tried to convince him that he was wrong. She tried not to show her true emotions. Then she confessed that she was Ashildr. The Emperor was not surprised. He was simply waiting for her to confirm it herself to confirm his suspicions. For the Emperor, this confession was of fundamental importance. He wanted to hear the truth from her lips in order to be convinced of his conclusions and finally confirm his suspicions. The man was indeed right, and the girl, without wasting any time, asked him to return all her things that had been taken from the house in the forest. This was important to her, and she hoped that he would be able to fulfill her request. However, the man noticed that, judging by the wizard's behavior, they were unlikely to want to part with the things. It seemed to him that what they had found was so valuable that they simply could not refuse it. Ariel was shocked when she heard this. She couldn't believe that even the Emperor didn't have enough power to command the mages. It undermined her idea of his power. Cedric confidently stated that he did have the authority. He turned to Ansel with instructions to bring Ariel's diary, immediately showing that he was ready to act. He also told the magicians to tell them that if they protested, they should move everything they found in the forest to the palace warehouse. This was supposed to be a convincing argument for them. The man reasoned that the wizards, not wanting to lose everything at once, would prefer to give up only one diary. This seemed obvious and quite logical to him. However, he was haunted by the question, was the diary's contents really that important? This interest gave him no peace. Ariel, noticing his thoughts, called out to the man sharply. She asked him to stop explaining that the diary could not be read since it could decipher the Arundel script. Despite her insistence, the Emperor had no intention of returning the diary to her. His actions clearly indicated that the man's intentions were completely at odds with her expectations. Ariel was starting to lose her composure. Her voice, usually soft, became louder and sharper, reflecting her growing irritation. It seemed absurd to her that he was acting as if he was deliberately trying to irritate her. She made it clear that the diary must be returned immediately. Ariel warned him firmly that if he allowed himself to read it, she would leave the palace without hesitation and return to the forest. However, the emperor remained calm. He smiled faintly and said with some irony that she spoke of returning to the forest so easily, as if it required no effort or regret from her. He reminded her that he had been holding back for her all this time. It had been 10 long years since she had left, and the pain of it had not faded. Every mention of it was painful to him, but he believed that it was worth continuing to endure for her sake. Then, many years ago, in despair over the loss of the connection between the magic circle and the forest, he made a risky decision. Despite all the dangers, he went into the forest himself. It was an attempt to return what was lost. Although he understood that he could face insurmountable obstacles, he searched for Ariel, driven not only by the desire to bring her back, but also by a firm determination to destroy anyone who would help her. If he encountered her supporters, he would destroy them all without hesitation, certain that this was the only way to solve the problem. For the emperor, things that did not belong to him did not deserve to exist. Destroying them would be the right thing to do. This conviction became part of his nature, and he believed that it was better to erase everything completely. This approach was obvious to him. Disappeared things leave neither memories nor bitterness. They simply disappear, freeing the mind and heart from unnecessary torment. He was sure that it was easier to live this way, avoiding unnecessary emotions and regrets about the past. These thoughts had once filled his mind completely. But even now, despite everything they had been through, Ariel could not understand what was happening between them. Suddenly, the emperor, as if he had not expected it, admitted that the thought of Ariel's disappearance from this world now caused him a strange feeling of rejection. This was the reason he wanted to keep her close. He wanted to lock her away so she could never leave again. There was not only determination in his words, but also a genuine need. The emperor had said outright that he wanted Ariel to be able to breathe only in his presence, to be completely dependent on him. His words sounded like a declaration of ownership, and it was both frightening and alarming. Moreover, he dreamed of hiding her somewhere far from everyone, in a place where only he could see her, where no one else could lay claim to her attention or love. He added that she also liked living next to him, although she denied it. At the same time, he asked her not to anger him, as if he wanted to preserve the fragile balance that connected them. In his opinion, after such a long patience, he deserves not only understanding, but also a reward. After all this time, he restrained his feelings, trying not to harm her. Ariel replied that it was just a diary not worth such attention. However, Cedric only chuckled. According to him, this is what makes it even more important and interesting. She warned him vehemently that she would be very angry if he dared to read the diary. Ariel insisted that the only right thing to do was to destroy it immediately. The emperor seemed to agree, but noted that the wizards would probably be upset. They had gone to so much trouble to get this diary back, and now it would just disappear. Ariel praised him for destroying the diary, but before she could relax, he asked an unexpected question. The emperor inquired about her relationship with Ashildr and Akelnar. His open suggestion that they might have had a romantic relationship infuriated Ariel, who quickly reassured him that they were just brother and sister to her. Surprised by this answer, he sarcastically remarked that in that case she had killed her own brother. His words sounded harsh and brought back painful memories. He added that conflicts between relatives were common, but only now did he begin to understand how she had achieved greatness in magic. He then revealed that Ashildr was still alive, finally confirming that he was indeed her brother. Ariel was his sister, not his lover. However, this revelation brought a strange expression to his face that puzzled her. She couldn't figure out what was behind his meaningful look. It left her completely confused and worried. The emperor explained that he was almost convinced that Ariel was Ashildr, but he was irritated by the constant mention of the Archmage, which did not give him peace. He stated outright that if they were truly a couple, he would destroy their union, and if Ashildr died, he would resurrect him only to kill him again. Ariel thought his words were cruel and begged him to stop, but he assured her that since Ashildr was her brother, he would spare him. Despite this, he couldn't understand why she hid her true greatness as the great sorceress Ashildur's. Ariel merely remarked that age might be the reason, but he pointed out with a slight grin that she was only 1,000 years old. She explained that her apparent age had stopped at 24. She saw no reason for this to conceal her identity. Ariel was proud of her accomplishments. Her magic circle continued to benefit the world, which brought her a deep sense of satisfaction. However, among all her accomplishments, there remained one act that she hid for a long time, and which almost no one knew about. The intrigued emperor asked what exactly she had done, and why he considered it so significant. Ariel honestly admitted that 1,000 years ago, the world was destroyed. Many people died in this cataclysm, and she considered herself guilty. She called herself a sinner, realizing that her actions had caused irreparable damage to the world. 1,000 years ago, every corner of the world was embroiled in fierce battles. The world became a battlefield. Kelsion, the great and powerful, condemned the magical kingdom of Arendal for its alliance with the forces of darkness, claiming that they sold their souls to the devil for magical power. The alliance between Kelsion and the Republic of Credel brought only destruction and fear to the lands of Arundel. The darkness that arose from the depths of evil spread, eclipsing the light of magic and peace, bringing chaos to the once prosperous kingdom. The Holy Empire of Kelsion and the Republic of Credel have joined forces to deal a powerful blow to Arundel. The union of two such powerful powers is an ominous sign for the magical kingdom, which suddenly finds itself in danger of total annihilation. Serenial could not hide her shock at the scale and size of the Empire's forces. It seemed to her that the unification of such a huge number of troops was an act of terrifying madness and a testament to the lengths to which they were prepared to go in order to win. The fanatics who served the god seemed to have completely lost their minds. Their faith and devotion drove them to extreme measures. Arundel, famous for its magic, seemed unable to cope with this threat, and the future of the kingdom was in question. To confront the enemy, Arundel summoned the best mages of the kingdom. Urgent training of top-level mages capable of using powerful long-range magic began. This was the only chance for salvation in such a difficult situation. Along with other wizards, members of the royal family, including Daniel, came out to defend the kingdom. As the greatest magicians of their time, they represented Arundel's last hope in this unequal battle. With spells more powerful than anyone could have imagined, they defeated the kingdom's enemies. Their magic was so strong that it seemed irresistible, and one by one their enemies fell under its onslaught. The war grew at an incredible speed, devastating everything in its path. Ariel, unable to bear the pain of loss, one day went to the battlefield. The sight of destruction around her made her fall to her knees. Before her eyes was a picture of complete devastation. Nothing was left. No houses, no people, no hope. Everything she loved was destroyed. Her mother, father, sister, and brother, all those dear to her, were dead. This realization fell upon her with unbearable weight, and her soul was filled with inexpressible grief. Ultimately, the world was completely destroyed. The Empire, the Republic, even Arundel, all fell in this terrible war, leaving behind only scorched lands and smoldering ruins. Every living thing perished, as if burned in the unquenchable flames of war. However, Ariel could not believe that this had to be so. She felt that all this was wrong. Her mind couldn't understand why everything had happened this way. Why had everyone left her alone? Despair filled her, and she began to cry bitterly like a child who had lost everything. Ariel couldn't find an explanation for what was happening. Why was fate so cruel to her? Why did she have to witness such horror? These questions tormented her soul. She blamed herself for what had happened. All the troubles, destruction, and loss, all of it she felt was due to her actions. In despair, she screamed, blaming herself. Left all alone, Ariel sank into grief. But after a few days, she suddenly saw a strange gate, shining with a mysterious light in front of her. It was the gate of change. Only after she lost everything did she realize that everything that had happened was part of someone's elaborate ruse. Forces from another dimension were using her and her world to achieve their own goals. Ariel realized that the god Kelsion, worshipped by the fanatics, existed in another dimension. His influence was spreading to her world, causing destruction. She also realized that opening the gate had played into their hands. This thought caused a flash of rage in her, and she felt a burning hatred for those who had used her so cruelly. Gathering her will into a fist, she vowed to destroy all possibilities for these forces to interfere in her world. Ariel decided to block not only the gates, but also any means of penetration. With incredible effort, she sealed the gates of change. The connection between dimensions was severed, and the path for beings from another world was closed forever. Sealing the gates took away all her magical powers. Left exhausted, she spent several days in the forest struggling to overcome her loneliness. The forest became her refuge. This time was a test for her, but she survived, managing to close the path for alien dimensions to her native lands. Her tenacity and fortitude allowed her to endure everything despite the pain and suffering. Her desire to protect the world and take revenge became her driving force. Now, after some time, she could admit one thing. Her actions led to disaster. Ariel felt guilty for the destruction of the world. She told Cedric that she was a sinner because it was her fault that the world was destroyed. Now she wanted to atone for her guilt by going into the forest. Ariel intended to stay in the forest, pray for the salvation of the world, and ask for forgiveness from everyone she had unwittingly betrayed. She decided to devote herself to prayer, wishing for this world to find peace and prosperity again. Her faith in redemption was boundless. The emperor, struck by her words, asked again, does she really consider herself guilty of the destruction of the world, and because of this wants to go into the forest? He sighed, trying to understand her motivation. Ariel seemed mysterious to him, but he respected her choice. Cedric admitted that he did not want to let her leave the palace, but he knew it was inevitable. He could only accept her decision. He instructed his advisor Ansel to prepare everything necessary for her departure. However, he still had his own plans for farewell. Cedric said he wanted to show her something special before she left the palace. Ariel, however, couldn't understand what exactly he was talking about. He wanted her to see the world outside the palace, the lands she thought were destroyed. This was his way of opening her eyes. When Ariel, still confused, found herself in the carriage, she did not quite understand where she was being taken. Everything that was happening seemed unexpected to her. Cedric assured her that they were going to a good place. The girl, however, was suspicious, which made him smile. She noted with irritation that she had literally been kidnapped. But at that moment, her attention was drawn to the amazing view outside the carriage window. Stunning views opened up before her eyes. She was amazed by the beauty of the road, the strength of the buildings, and the liveliness of the streets. Everything around spoke of prosperity. The roads were well maintained, the buildings looked magnificent, and the streets were full of life. Every part of the city, wherever she looked, was in good condition. Ariel realized that the world had changed a lot. These changes came as a complete surprise to her. She couldn't believe that everything looked exactly like this. When the carriage stopped, she realized that their journey had come to an end. Something important was waiting for her. The operator, without turning around, told the girl to follow him. His words sounded decisive and commanding, leaving no doubt about the need to obey. The girl, slightly embarrassed by what was happening, began to carefully exit the carriage. Before her stood a majestic building that was impressive in its architecture. Tall columns, glittering windows, and exquisite details of the facade spoke of wealth and power. The girl paused for a moment, amazed by the view. The emperor's visit was a great honor for the locals, and they wanted to show their respect. To show them their best, they ushered the guests into the most luxurious upper room. This care and attention to detail showed the importance of the moment for all present. Ariel, entering the hotel, could hardly hide her surprise. She was shocked by the fact that the emperor had decided to show her this particular place. She had expected something else, but she could not have guessed that his goal was the hotel. The emperor, noticing her confusion, explained his choice. He said that the upper floors offered the most breathtaking views of the city. It was here, in his opinion, that one could see the true beauty of this world. The long-awaited moment had arrived. The emperor confidently declared that the time had come. Now everything he wanted to show would be revealed to Ariel. He directed her to the panoramic windows from where the entire city was visible. The emperor turned to Ariel with enthusiasm, inviting her to see the majestic city. His pride in the place was palpable. He wanted her to share his admiration. The girl felt confused. She could not understand anything until her gaze fell on a strange magic circle glowing nearby. It was an unusual and fascinating sight that caused her great surprise. Her shock increased when she saw a vehicle in the sky hovering above the ground. It was not a carriage, not a bird, and not a dragon. A machine flying in the air seemed completely impossible to her. The emperor explained that this was an airship, one of the greatest achievements of their time. These devices were regularly used to deliver supplies and became a symbol of progress and technology. He also said that the creation of airships became possible only recently. After much research, scientists managed to develop a new fuel that could keep them in the air, which was a real breakthrough in engineering. The emperor suggested that Ariel take a closer look at the world around her. He explained that many similar airships and other technologies had been created. All this was proof that the world was continuing to evolve. He stated emphatically that the world was much bigger and stronger than she believed. Despite hardships and wars, it continued to recover, demonstrating amazing resilience and beauty. The magic circles that were activating everywhere were a clear sign of this development. The emperor compared them to a pulse that animated the world, which had reached unprecedented heights in its progress. Ariel thought about it. She realized that no memory of her past world could compare to this beauty. The city was magnificent, and she felt like this was a new beginning. Looking at the panorama that opened up, she noticed that the country where she found herself must have some poetic and majestic name. This world evoked in her a feeling of respect and awe. The emperor proudly announced that this country was called the Elysium Empire. It was created through the union of science and technology, which made it unique and powerful. Although the combination of science, magic, and technology sounded unusual, Ariel felt like she had heard the motto somewhere before. It reminded her of something from her past, awakening long-forgotten memories. Meanwhile, news of the impending danger was troubling the inhabitants. Krogale was approaching, and the mages were sent to the canyon to block his path. It was an important strategic decision. The emperor mentioned that fire magic could play a key role. He also asked if Ariel had heard about it. Her knowledge could be useful in this situation. Rumors said that an alliance of different races was forming in the south. Humans, elves, and dwarves. They sought to unite to resist the destruction caused by magic and war. This union, despite the strange combination of magic and technology, was reminiscent of old times. However, the idea of scientific progress without magic seemed unusual and new. The emperor explained that the unification of the different races had a single goal: to protect the world from destruction by magic and war. After the end of hostilities, he planned to teach the allies magic, emphasizing that it could be used not only for attack, but also for creation. Ariel noticed that the world around her seemed to be indeed connected to magic. She noticed that the emperor was using principles of science and technology, integrating them with magic, which allowed him to achieve amazing results. She dreamed of a quick end to the war. For Ariel, this became the main desire, because only peace could allow this beautiful world to develop further without losses and destruction. However, her brother had a different opinion. He believed that despite the dreams of peace, they needed to focus on the present, as current events required their full attention and effort. As the world was engulfed in war, a small spark of hope emerged, a small union emerging amidst chaos. This union became a symbol of how even in the darkest times, people strive for unity and order. Over time, these small steps gave birth to a great empire. Ariel realized that even in a world where much had been destroyed, they were able to survive and turn the ruins into a new prosperous state. She thought about how good it was that she had managed to stop in time in the past. Her actions then had played an important role, and now she could watch this world continue to grow and develop. Sealing the gates of change was the key decision that prevented other worlds from interfering, allowing the world to maintain its uniqueness and develop in its own way. Ariel's 1,000 years of dedication to protecting the gates were not in vain. These efforts helped create an amazing world filled with beauty, life, and progress. Although it may have seemed futile on her part, the results were beyond her expectations. Ariel marveled at how far magic and technology had come, and was glad that this world continued to exist. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the true beauty of this world. Everything she saw around her, made her proud and touched her to the depths of her soul. The emperor, seeing her tears, approached her gently, took her face, and began to wipe away the drops running down her cheeks. His gesture showed genuine concern and understanding of her feelings. He told her that he was the master of this magnificent world and offered to stay by his side so that together they could watch this world grow and prosper. The emperor confessed that he wanted to look into the future with her. He wanted her to share with him the joy of watching the development of the world of which he was so proud. Taking a step forward, Cedric kissed her hand tenderly and asked her to become his empress. His voice was soft, but there was a deep sincerity and determination in it. Ariel, confused by his proposal, quickly removed her hand. She explained that they could not be together. Their worlds and time were too different for them to be able to unite in the future. She explained that time flows differently for her and her forest. What seems like centuries to them flies by in a few days for her. This makes their future together impossible. However, Ariel admitted that if she stayed here for a while, nothing bad would happen to the gate. She wanted to admire this wonderful world that had enchanted her for a little while longer. She remembered that maybe she should stay here for a while without marrying Cedric. She wanted to understand this world better before making such a big decision. But life in the palace turned out to be boring for her. Ariel realized that she simply had nothing to do within these walls. Waiting and loneliness became her constant companions. While Cedric was busy with imperial affairs, she had no one to talk to or have fun with. She understood that his work was important, but she still felt abandoned. It was hard for her to move around alone, as the terrain was unfamiliar, and she didn't know the language. Ariel thought that perhaps she should have forgiven past grievances, as it was even harder for her without support. Without her, everything seemed empty and lifeless. It seemed that this silence and loneliness would continue until she found a personal maid who could help her settle in. Her only entertainment was watching people pass by. However, even this could not fill her days, because there were very few people here, and their bustle seemed monotonous. One day, she noticed people she had never seen before. Their clothes were very different from the usual outfits of servants and maids, which immediately attracted her attention. As she turned around, her gaze fell upon a girl of astonishing beauty. She radiated kindness and warm energy that immediately made Ariel feel sympathetic. The stranger's gaze was so sincere and friendly that Ariel felt her heart warm up a little. The girl was like a light in this dull and lonely palace. The woman told the saint that before her was the very person whom the emperor had personally brought. She said this with a note of excitement, as if expecting the saint's reaction to such a significant event. The saint decided to take a less busy path, hoping to avoid the large crowds. However, when she unexpectedly met this woman, she felt an interest in her personality and decided to find out who she was. The woman thought that Miss Violet should be insulted by such a thing. She could not understand why the emperor had ordered her to choose the date for the marriage, and not others. Violet calmly explained that it was because of her status as a cleric representing the temple. The emperor trusted her judgment. However, the woman objected that she herself was a candidate for the role of empress, and such a decision of Her Majesty was clearly too much. Violet advised her to be careful in her words, reminding her that the palace was full of rumors. To avoid further encounters with people, they decided to quicken their pace and head straight to the temple. This seemed the best solution in the current situation. The inspector was already on his way, and this had been announced in advance. The anticipation of his arrival caused noticeable tension among everyone. Be that as it may, the question remained open. When the saint approached them, she showed interest, asking what had happened. Upon seeing Miss Violet, everyone present could not contain their emotions. Everyone began shouting over each other, trying to get her attention. They desperately tried to explain that some traces had been found in the alley that could be of great importance. Violet, approaching the place, began to think that this could be a ritual associated with murder. She was alarmed by the fact that this was not the first time. Something similar had happened just a few days ago. She could not believe that something like this was possible in the capital of the empire. She came to the conclusion that this was the work of a cult. The saint, hearing about this, was stunned and did not know what to do. She remembered that she had recently received a revelation from God, that danger was approaching the imperial palace. The disaster of the past could be repeated in a new guise. This caused everyone to discuss rumors that a new mistress of the emperor had recently appeared in the palace. Although it was hard to believe, the atmosphere around could not be described as anything other than ominous. The saint had a growing sense of foreboding. One of the women approached her, asking what exactly God had said about the coming catastrophe. The woman assumed that the one for whom the emperor had exchanged Miss Violet, the mysterious witch from the eastern forest, was to blame for everything. The time had come for the truth to be revealed. A girl of suspicious origin was near the emperor, and this could not help but raise questions. Everyone continued to loudly discuss the situation, despite the saint's warnings to be careful in their statements. Rumors of the cult's sacrificial rituals grew more widespread and more frightening. These events were clearly not isolated. It is obvious that something similar will happen again. People began to become increasingly anxious, and soon the accumulated doubts could lead to a sharp explosion of emotions. At this point, everything could get out of control, so it was important to wait now. All that was left was to wait for the moment when everything would reveal itself in order to avoid premature actions. The Marquisate of Kelton was not left aside either. The topic of the girl chosen for the emperor did not give rest. Priscilla believed that the empire was heading for ruin, and now she understood why Felix was a more worthy contender for the throne. Marchioness Priscilla, St. Violet's mother, was furious. The emperor had brought an unknown woman to the palace and was going to arrange a wedding with her. Violet entered the palace and was forced to listen to all sorts of meaningless conversations, which only increased the tension. The man warned her that even within the walls of their luxurious mansion, she should not feel safe. He pointed out that they could be followed, and any careless word or action could be used against them. However, despite the warning, the woman could not calm her rage. She was especially angry that her daughter had not returned yet, leaving her in the unknown. Anger took over her thoughts, preventing her from concentrating. She considered it humiliating and ridiculous that the title of Empress could be so easily challenged. The man, on the contrary, pointed out that not all was lost, and with the right actions, the situation could be corrected. Priscilla thought about his words. Trying to find a way out, she turned to him and asked if he had any new information or a plan that could help her regain control of the situation. The man said that the girl they were dealing with could not read or write. He suggested using this weakness to turn the situation to their advantage. To implement the plan, he had already begun to look for a suitable maid. She was to not only perform daily duties, but also carry out special assignments necessary for their plan. It was soon decided to introduce their own person into the situation. The maid was surprised to learn that the girl had unexpectedly applied for this position, which opened up new opportunities for maneuver. The vacancy really looked tempting. Its conditions included not only a high salary, but also additional bonuses for fulfilling specific requirements, which attracted many applicants. The girl, who wanted to earn as much as possible, was determined to try her luck. Her desire to succeed, despite all the obstacles, gave her courage. With her pink hair commanding attention and a determined expression on her face, she walked straight towards the Lord Chamberlain, ready to make her intentions known. The Chief Chamberlain, noticing her appearance, turned and with a keen gaze assessed her appearance, trying to understand with whom he was dealing. The girl confidently declared that she wanted to become the personal maid of the honored guest. Her statement aroused his obvious interest, making him wonder about her motives. Thus began her work. From now on, her main task was to serve Miss Rachel Bourbon, and this role was to become an important stage in her life. She introduced herself as the third daughter of the Barony of Bourbon. The girl sincerely expressed her joy at receiving a new position and her readiness to cope with any difficulties. Ariel was surprised to learn that the girl was a half-elf. This explained her unusual appearance, which immediately attracted the attention of those around her. Ariel wondered what it meant to be half-elf. She wondered how it affected her destiny, since elves were always proud of their pure blood. Due to her mixed origin, the girl had weak energy. However, this did not prevent her from performing her duties with noticeable diligence and thoroughness. Despite her modesty, the girl promised to be a reliable and attentive assistant. She was ready to carry out any assignment if it was required by Mrs. Ariel. She assured the lady that she was ready to respond to requests at any time and support her in any endeavors demonstrating sincere devotion. Ariel briefly considered whether she really wanted anything from her new assistant. She was consumed with thoughts about how best to exploit the situation. At this time, the maid brought a refreshing drink. This attentiveness surprised and pleased Ariel, leaving her with a good impression of the new maid. Feeling thirsty, Ariel was pleasantly surprised by how quickly the girl guessed her needs, even before she realized them herself. The girl's attention to detail was admirable. Ariel knew that such care was unforeseen, but it was clearly trustworthy. Ariel slowly opened her eyes, feeling pleasantly relaxed. Her sleep had been deep, and she had finally had enough sleep after long days of stress. The thick curtains blocked out the bright light, helping her to prolong the morning calm. The maid was already there, as if she had sensed her mistress awakening in advance. She brought a basin of water so that Ariel could refresh herself. Her actions were clear and habitual, as if she had anticipated her mistress's wishes. Ariel jumped in surprise when she heard the maid's voice. She offered to wash herself, which involuntarily frightened the mistress, as she did not expect to see her so close. Ariel wondered if this behavior could be called a premonition. More likely, the maid had simply been watching her closely for the past hour, studying her every move and gesture. The maid's gaze penetrated straight into the soul while remaining absolutely dispassionate. Ariel could not understand where this girl got so much cold confidence from. The constant feeling of being watched made her feel strangely uneasy. Even when she was nearby, the maid managed to remain unnoticed. It was alarming and made her wonder how she could escape such watchful attention. Ariel felt a little uncomfortable with the endless scrutiny. She began to wonder if there was a way to escape the stare that seemed to follow her everywhere. To distract herself, Ariel decided to go to the Imperial Library. She thought that there she could safely hide from the maid's eyes. In fact, her goal was simple. She wanted to find something interesting to read. However, the maid's surprise betrayed her thoughts. After all, the mistress did not know the letters. Ariel hoped to be alone in the library. She wanted to take her time looking around, enjoying the privacy without unnecessary attention. The maid, suspecting that the mistress had a specific request, offered to bring the book herself. But Ariel refused, citing that she would choose based on the pictures, since she could not read. In fact, she wished Rachel wouldn't follow her. The library seemed like the perfect place to get away from her constant presence. Rachel didn't object, just nodded in response. Ariel, taking advantage of her silence, quickly left happy for her short release. In the library, she dreamed of finding something light. Perhaps children's books with large letters and simple illustrations. This would help her learn the letters, mastering the written language, step by step. Ariel decided that even at her level, this was entirely possible. She believed that with a little patience, she would eventually learn to read like the locals. A few days ago, Ariel had firmly decided to adapt to the palace. Studying became an important part of her plan, and she set a goal for herself. To get used to her new surroundings, she needed to learn to write. She knew that the emperor had to acknowledge and support this. However, Cedric unexpectedly refused her this wish. His categoricalness puzzled Ariel because she did not see anything dangerous in it. She reminded him that she had once taught him the Arundel script when he was a child. Now she thought it was his turn to help her. The emperor listened to her, but did not change his mind. He noted that he was not yet sure that she would stay here for long. His anxiety was that Ariel could easily escape by learning to write. This made him restless and caused him internal conflict. Cedric seemed to be struggling with himself, his face reflecting anxiety and deep inner pain, as if from an old unhealed wound. Ariel began to suspect that his past, where he had been rejected, still tormented him. Her thoughts became increasingly disturbing. She thought he had long since forgotten the insults, and she had not thought he could be so vulnerable. Now his condition aroused her compassion. Besides, she noticed that he did not seek to isolate her completely. His words about a personal maid gave her some freedom. He promised that if she had a maid, she would be free to roam the palace. This even included the opportunity to visit the library. Ariel hoped that Cedric hadn't banned her from the library. If so, she would be able to study writing in peace. She decided that learning would be her personal initiative. She just needed to start small, and over time, she would master all the intricacies. At first, she learned simple words like rabbit. Each new symbol was a struggle, but the result was joyful. She also learned how to spell dog. Ariel was confident that by gradually memorizing the letters, she would master the general principle. Her studies were interrupted by an unexpected guest. Someone approached and caught her attention, bringing her out of her immersion in the text. The girl was greeted by a child with a sweet smile, and she was momentarily confused, not understanding where this charming creature came from. The boy looked so friendly that she involuntarily felt a feeling of warmth. The child said that his teacher had told him to ask the dear guest a question. He said this with such enthusiasm that it became clear that this matter was extremely important to him. The boy was delightfully charming. In his wizard-like robe, he resembled a young wizard. Judging by his age, Ariel assumed that he was most likely just beginning his training. Ariel decided to clarify what the question was about. She leaned slightly towards the boy to show her attention, expecting to hear something curious. The young student said that the teacher wanted to ask her about the book that the Archmage Ashildr had written, and that His Majesty had brought to the palace. The boy's voice sounded with obvious admiration. Ariel realized that they were talking about the book that had caused the recent riots. Her words surprised her, and the boy, noticing her reaction, was surprised in response, and asked again if he had understood correctly. The girl stood up and, with firmness in her voice, explained that the book had been destroyed. It no longer existed. She said directly that it had been burned and no longer existed. Hearing this, the boy was completely confused. He looked stunned and continued to insist that such a thing was simply impossible, as if hoping that it was a mistake. Ariel calmly replied that it was possible since the book had originally belonged to her. She then gently suggested that the boy return to the teacher so as not to waste any more time. However, she suddenly stopped him, noticing something on the lining of his robe. It turned out to be a magic circle, which seemed especially interesting to her. Ariel knew that such circles were activated by transforming magical points into a single system, but Cidi's method seemed to be different from her own. She noted that special items or scrolls were often required to activate magic. However, this was the first time she encountered a magic circle engraved on the fabric of clothing. Intrigued, she asked the boy if she could take a closer look at his robe. He readily agreed, explaining that the magic circle helped regulate the wearer's temperature. Ariel noticed an unusual solution. The circle was connected to the magical power of the owner, allowing him to independently control the process. But she warned that using such a circle requires a significant expenditure of mana, and advised not to abuse it so as not to deplete your resources. The boy said that he only uses the circle in extreme cold or heat because it is not fully drawn, which requires more force to work. Because the circle was incomplete, maintaining stable operation was expensive. A large amount of magical energy had to be channeled for comfort. Ariel explained the entire algorithm of work to him, adding that she could complete the circle. The boy did not understand anything from her words, but soon saw the result. After completing the circle, the energy consumption was minimal, and its activation was required only once. The boy was delighted with this simple but effective improvement. Even with his weak mana, the temperature remained stable, and he couldn't hide his joy. It seemed like a small line had transformed everything. He noted with admiration that the guests were well versed in magic despite her modesty. To the boy, she seemed surprisingly skilled and benevolent. Ariel, feeling awkward, admitted that she was simply curious about the new magical construct. She didn't want to attract too much attention. She suggested that the boy keep it a secret while she got used to the palace in order to avoid unnecessary conversations. The boy didn't understand why this was important, but Ariel explained that if anyone asked, he could say that he discovered it himself by accident. She hinted that revealing secrets could end badly, and the boy realized that she was serious. He assured her that he would not tell anyone. The child promised to keep everything a secret, realizing that the guest was counting on his restraint. They said goodbye, and Ariel felt relieved, confident that the boy would keep his word. She was amazed at how magic was introduced into everyday life. Rachel approached her, and seeing the result, noted Ariel's skill. Rachel's expression was filled with genuine surprise, which made Ariel feel embarrassed. She didn't want to stand out. Remembering that Rachel had been there the whole time, Ariel knew she needed to be convinced to keep quiet too. It felt like Rachel had vanished into thin air while she was getting carried away. They were deeply shocked to learn that the boy had an advanced robe. For wizards of his level, this was something incredible and almost unattainable. No one understood how just one line in the magic circle could cause such a strong effect. The new line that appeared in the circle caused them real confusion. They knew what exactly this magical feature was, but they couldn't explain how it could have ended up in the child's robe. It was clearly beyond their comprehension. When the boy was asked about the origin of this feature, he honestly answered that he himself did not know. Then the wizards began to speculate. Perhaps this was just an incredible coincidence. Some even suggested that the line appeared literally out of nowhere. However, it was not worth thinking like that, because everything indicated that the child was a real genius. His abilities could be compared with legendary personalities of the emperor's level. When asked how he did it, the boy replied that he could not explain it to them clearly. Simple wizards were not able to understand such a complex nature of his magic, since it was born intuitively in him. The wizards began to think that they had a real genius in front of them, and the boy remembered how the mistress once advised him to keep such abilities a secret, which made him think about his future. Realizing the situation, the boy came to the conclusion that he had made a mistake. He felt an internal conflict. Should he tell about his powers or keep them a secret? The decision seemed extremely difficult to him. The emperor, hearing about the commotion that had occurred in the Tower of Magicians, wanted to find out what had happened. He expressed surprise that even minor changes in the magic circles could cause such a storm of emotions. Ariel, who was the center of all this commotion, replied that she had merely changed the magic circle slightly. She had not expected that such a simple action would cause such serious consequences. When the emperor asked her what she was looking at, Ariel showed him a book with illustrations. For her it was just entertainment, but in a world with a different magical tradition, her actions had a huge resonance. Ariel thought her changes were minor, but the level of magic in this world was vastly different from what she was used to. It was obvious to her, but unbelievable to those around her. She told that magic in this world had once completely disappeared. For her, who knew magic from the other side, this was a shocking discovery. Ariel could not understand for a long time how this could happen. 1,000 years ago, during the Great War, magic disappeared, along with the fall of great kingdoms. The world faced a catastrophe that brought civilization to the brink of total destruction. The war destroyed 3 powerful countries, almost completely wiping out their populations. Only one small alliance managed to escape this fate, secluding itself in the south. It became the last hope for the survivors. The Southern Alliance brought together representatives of various races who contributed to the revival of the world. Their cooperation began the era of rebirth, laying the foundations for a new development. Using the combined knowledge, the Union began to develop science, which gradually made life comfortable. However, over time, the development of science reached a dead end and progress stopped. Then a discovery occurred that changed the course of history. A magic circle based on ancient magic transformed mana into energy, giving new impetus to the development of technology. This discovery was a real miracle. Machines that could work even on a small amount of mana caused a revolution. Technology began to change. Magic became an integral part of the world. Magic had regained its dominant position. If Ariel had admitted that she was Ashildr, she would have been immediately proclaimed the goddess of magic, but she preferred to live in peace and quiet. The emperor, having learned of her identity, made a firm decision not to share her with anyone. Despite the revival of magic, its level in this world remained far from perfect. One magic circle changed everything. It is ancient magic that collected the novel and transformed it into energy. Miracle. The machine started moving even from a small amount of mana. So the discovery changed many things, changing the level of technology. Soon, magic began to rule point. And if she tells everyone that she is Ashildr, then overnight she will become a god for the wizards of the empire. But the girl still preferred to live in peace and quiet, so she refused. The emperor noted that he also did not want to share it with anyone. It means that magic has disappeared. Although it is late, they managed to revive it, but of course the level of development is far from ideal. It was a little curious why the wizards were calmly wandering around the palace coming out, but its territory was a tower for them. Although they were a little strange, they still knew how to cast spells. It turns out that the palace actively supports wizards, and that child ended up there for that reason too. He was very cute, and she didn't understand why he was so handsome and looked like a puppy. Of course he wasn't up to Cidi's level as a child, but still. Cidi was an incredibly sweet child. She still remembers how he would chirp her name with his bright blue eyes wide open. That little boy has grown up a lot, and now he is an emperor. But there are still some things left from those times. For example, his beautiful eye color, lips saying her name, though his voice was rougher now. Now he is approaching her, and that is why she is very embarrassed. She asked him to stop and asked what he was doing. Ariel screamed, asking why he suddenly pursed his lips. He assumed she was staring at her because she wanted a kiss. Ariel began to deny it and said that she was just looking at the face. She turned away and said that everything was not like that at all because she was very embarrassed. Plus, he wants to steal her first kiss without warning. The emperor couldn't believe it was her first kiss. She said it was true. But the emperor said that this was not so because he had already kissed her when we had it during their first meeting. She closed my eyes. They say that a sleeping princess will wake up if a prince kisses her, but she just continued to sleep in a sweet dream. I couldn't believe that back then when he was so little, he did this. Although that's not even the point, she will be arrested because of him. He involved her pure soul in this crime. That would be the end of their conversation for today, so he wished her a good night. But the girl started screaming at him to get out of here. When he came out, he realized that she still didn't know that the kiss was on the forehead. Because at that time, his mother kissed him goodnight, only like that, and he liked the idea that she had never kissed him before. Ansel turned to His Highness and reported that the priest urgently demanded an audience. The emperor was surprised that he wanted to see him so late at night. The temple, which had been silent all this time, began to move. This is not a good sign at all, but he agreed to this audience. The priest turned to His Highness and noted that a disease was spreading among the people. The emperor was surprised and asked again. And the priest began to say that its symptoms were that the entire human body was suddenly drying out. This is exactly how ancient occultists sacrificed people. The priest confirmed this and said that this was a sign that a witch had appeared. He also heard that she lives in the eastern monster forest. He turned to His Highness and noted that His Highness had brought someone from there a few days ago. The priest was pleased with himself for having said this. The emperor stood up and said that his story was very interesting since he was talking about Ariel. He grabbed his sword and said it was a bold statement. He came closer and closer to the priest and said that his bold expression was for those who do not understand anything. Cedric asked him how he dared to unfairly accuse the future empress. He cut his face, so the man immediately began to ask him not to do it and begged for mercy. Cedric asked who sent it. He assumed it was Felix or Violet. The priest pretended that he did not understand at all what the gentleman was talking about. The emperor was sure that it was the elder brother imprisoned in the temple, or Saint Violet. Cedric thought it was one of them. But in the meantime, the man was simply begging for forgiveness. The emperor ordered Ellen Lindbergh to find out what was really behind this. The priest did not understand at all where they were dragging him. He asked to be saved. The emperor was shocked that they dared to drag Ariel here. It seems it's time to restore order to the temple, and it's best not to delay. Many people were talking about the fact that the guest, His Majesty, is a witch. No one can believe that people on the emperor fell in love with that girl. That is why such a rumor started. The maid said that this information came from the temple. The other girl was surprised and realized that in that case it could be true. After this, the lady approached them and ordered them to repeat whether His Majesty had indeed brought a candidate for empress. This is Rosemary Raymond, the youngest daughter of Duke Raymond, one of the leading candidates for the post of empress. The maids say that she is a witch. But the girl began to say that in any case, this girl is a new candidate who was brought personally by the emperor. But they started saying that this is inaccurate information. She is completely illiterate. She can't even read. She came from nowhere, so she can't become an empress. And the man the emperor brought in such rumors spread His Majesty will not be able to just sit still. A person who was not shaken by gossip. Or maybe this girl who has nothing to say in response, so she can't stop the rumors. It would be funny if the emperor really has such bad preferences. The girl ordered that she ask me for an audience request because she is going to the palace right now. If she doesn't like her, she will have to get rid of her. The maids wondered whether they could stay there, but the other maid thought they should come closer. But when this tree opened its eyes and smiled at them, they were very scared. Ariel shouted at him not to torment the maids and came towards her. Her legs are very tired, so she can't read anymore. The lady noted that next time she should bring a chair and table for convenience. This garden is definitely suitable for reading in silence, because no one comes here for fear of monsters. Well, then the emperor came to her because he had finally found her. He thought she came here to hide from people Ariel didn't understand, where else she could go in the palaces, except this place only to the library. She can't even read the signs because of the purpose of the letters, so she looks at picture books here, and it would be nice if the maid could be her personal guide. Rachel was too taciturn. Ariel felt like a hole was about to be made in her. Ariel also asked why he came at all. Actually, he wanted to say something. Rosemary from the duchy requested a meeting, but the lady doesn't even know who she is. The emperor noted that this was one of the candidates for the post of empress, but they called themselves that. Ariel was immediately delighted because it turns out that there are already candidates and said that this is very good. She told him to choose wisely, so he immediately asked what she just said. There is no reason to refuse. It is better for her to meet her and build a friendly relationship. Ariel was shocked that she had requested a meeting with her, and not him. The emperor looked at my book and was shocked that she was still at the level of reading picture books. At the upcoming banquet, he would announce her to his empress, before that it would be a good idea for her to make friends with aristocrats, so he gave permission. She believed that she had come to the palace out of anger because she was a candidate empress, and he was offering her to deal with the green one who was burning with rivalry towards her. She is already 1,000 years old, and it is difficult to resist the younger generation not so much. The emperor said that everything is fine, and she will definitely like her. All of this, that her nickname is the Devil of the Duchy. Ariel did not quite understand in what sense this was, and in general, why she should like her. She was shocked that he managed to notice that she liked a beauty with a bad character. After that, Rosemary greeted the guest of the palace, or she should call her as the dear guest of His Majesty. It is not clear yet. Ariel smiled and noted that she could be called whatever her interlocutor wished. It sounded so easy and casual that the girl was surprised by her calmness. The maid looked her over from head to toe and added with a hint of malice that her visit was most likely aimed at finding the mistress's shortcomings. The room seemed a bit cramped to the girl, although she had expected something completely different. She imagined that the person whom the emperor had decided to make empress should be surrounded by luxury. She thought that if this cramped room symbolized the emperor's love, then her expectations were clearly not met, and this made her feel a little sad. Ariel was surprised by her remark, considering that the room was quite cozy and not at all small as the guest claimed. The girl couldn't understand why the furniture seemed so simple and modest. Ariel explained that she had heard that the emperor had deliberately chosen an old-fashioned style for this room. The maid's gaze lingered again on the furniture, which she considered to be of poor quality. She even doubted whether they paid for such things, as if they had simply been taken from the nearest store. The setting looked so ordinary that the girl assumed that the lady's clothes could also have been chosen hastily and temporarily. Ariel, without embarrassment, clarified that these were indeed temporary clothes, but that tailors would soon make something more suitable for her. The guest continued to speak with interest, as if she had heard that the lady was even illiterate, which sounded more funny to her than critical. Ariel calmly confirmed that there was some truth in this, but added that she was now learning to write. The girl wondered what the emperor could have been guided by when choosing such a person. She couldn't understand how His Majesty could fall in love at first sight with a woman who, moreover, wasn't even particularly beautiful. Ariel, sharing her surprise, just shrugged. The guest noted that for some reason her direct words did not offend the lady, who reacted to everything with enviable calm, as if nothing was happening. Her gaze seemed especially incomprehensible, calm and warm, as if a grandmother were looking at her little granddaughter and not at an impudent visitor. The girl decided that it was better not to argue with Ariel now, but to prepare better next time in order to still gain the upper hand in their communication. When everything had been examined, the girl declared that she was quite satisfied with what she had seen and hurried to take her leave. Ariel was slightly surprised by her sudden departure. At parting, the guest clarified that her visit was over, and the tea turned out to be very tasty, although the cup remained untouched. Ariel noticed that the girl didn't even try the drink, but she just threw the handkerchief on the table, adding that they would meet again. The maid quickly picked up the handkerchief, but was ordered to throw it away, which caused her no small surprise. Rosemary explained that the handkerchief was dirty and therefore belonged in the wastebasket, and then turned around with confidence. By ordering the maid to follow her, she made it clear that their visit was over. She has character, Ariel thought, watching her decisive actions. It was clearly written on her face. The maid, watching all this silently, agreed with Ariel. The rumors about this lady's difficult character were clearly true and did not need additional evidence. However, despite her complex character, she remained incredibly attractive. The mistress suddenly declared that she was still a cutie, which left the maids completely perplexed. Rosemary added that the girl reminded her of a puppy, cute but with a difficult character. There was a strange tenderness in her words that softened the severity of her tone. That's why Cedric assumed that Rosemary would like her. After all, if someone could tame this wayward girl, everything might turn out differently. Rosemary smiled and remarked that she would definitely meet her again. Her sharp barking remarks were so funny that it lifted her spirits. It was hard not to notice that Rosemary was clearly attracted to extraordinary personalities. The maids, however, had noticeably tired and puzzled expressions. The maids decided that such behavior was entirely in keeping with their mistress's nature. Her interests were strange, but perhaps that was what made her so attractive. Meanwhile, the weather was great, and Ariel decided to return the books she had read to get new ones. She was thinking of finding something easy to read with pictures or simple words. However, her plans changed slightly when she was approached by a young wizard who, instead of inviting her to his place, patiently waited for a meeting right there. He said with genuine joy that he had hoped to see her again. His face was glowing with happiness, and Ariel was a little taken aback by his sincerity. When Ariel heard that he was waiting for her, she was surprised. Then the boy explained that, thanks to her help with the robe, he was officially recognized as a wizard. He said that it was because his work was mistaken for the result of his magical efforts. Although he looked slightly embarrassed, he was genuinely sorry that it had happened. Ariel gently replied that there was no need to apologize. She herself preferred not to talk about it, so his guilt was minimal. The boy respectfully asked how he could thank her for such generous help. His eyes showed seriousness of intention, but Ariel just smiled and said that the best gratitude would be if he just kept it a secret. Suddenly, the boy noticed that she was holding a picture book. She explained that this was her way of learning to write, which interested the boy greatly. Then, he offered to help her learn the letters. His offer was said so sincerely that Ariel felt embarrassed and confused. Ariel, a little surprised, asked again, reminding him that the emperor had ordered not to interfere with her education. However, the boy was not embarrassed. He calmly noted that he had not personally received such an order, so it probably would not be a violation. She was still interested in his name. He gave his full name, Julian Ray, but asked her to call him simply Julian Ariel. With a slight smile, said that she trusted him. She found his kind and gentle nature charming, and his puppy-like hair reminded her of Cedric as a child. Cedric was also very cute as a child, which made her smile slightly. She decided it was better not to develop the topic. The maids looked at each other silently when they heard her words. They understood that the mistress saw things in her own way, but it was better not to discuss it out loud. Her views could embarrass anyone. During their training, Julian noticed how quickly Ariel grasped new things. Her ability to learn the alphabet in such a short time seemed amazing to him. He couldn't help but praise her, saying that she was amazing. Her progress amazed even him, because she began reading easy texts almost immediately. Ariel listened to the praise with pleasure, and immediately asked if he had any books about magic. She had long dreamed of reading something like that to learn more about the magical world. The boy explained that such books exist, but they are kept in a tower where outsiders are strictly forbidden to enter. Ariel thought about it, understanding the complexity of the situation. She thought that mages were really introverts, to guard their secrets so carefully. So she asked if there were any books about ancient lands like Arendelle. Julian perked up and said that there was a shop in town where you could find artifacts and books from the ancient world. This place was famous among the aristocracy. Ariel was shocked to hear that such unique items were being sold openly. Her interest in the place only increased. Julian said that you can find not only books and manuscripts there, but also furniture dishes and other items that are antiques or imitations. This place is really popular among aristocrats, and almost everyone knew about it. Julian added that this place is especially interesting for those who love antiquities. Ariel asked where the shop was, assuming it was far away. However, Julian said it was nearby. You can immediately get to the street you need when you leave the palace. Ariel suggested going there right now. Julian, a little confused, reminded her that she might not be allowed to leave the palace. She brushed off his words, claiming that it was just a short walk nearby. The maids standing nearby were stunned by her frivolity. The maids hurried to pass this information on to their superiors, hoping to prevent any possible trouble. At the same time, they tried to persuade the mistress to return. However, Ansel caught up with them on the way, hurrying to say that His Highness was currently at a meeting. This clearly upset Ariel. She sighed in disappointment, noting that it would be great to go with him. But she quickly decided that there was no point in delaying and would go on her own. Ansel, however, tried to stop her, reminding her that she couldn't go out alone. Ariel slightly mockingly asked if she really needed anyone's permission to go for a walk now. Ansel explained that this was not entirely true, but added that if His Majesty found out about this, the situation could change significantly. Ariel just chuckled and said that, in that case, the Emperor should wait. There was confidence in her voice that she was doing the right thing. She told him to tell the Emperor that if he was obedient, she would bring him a gift. At the same time, she asked if it was possible to send the bills to the palace for payment. Ansel, realizing that it was impossible to convince her, gave orders to the knights to follow the lady to ensure her safety. Indeed, Ariel was a problematic person. Ansel had heard that there had been an increase in the number of noble ladies being kidnapped on the streets lately, and was concerned about her protection. The shop was filled with a variety of Arundel items, each shelf and display case reminiscent of a bygone era, where sophistication and luxury were at their height. The man who was following the lady was sure that she was looking for something specific, something that could stand out from other things and have special value. The lady specified that she needed a book on magic, hinting that her interests went far beyond the ordinary. This slightly surprised the seller, but he did not ask any unnecessary questions. She remembered Rosemary's words, who once remarked that her furniture was too simple. This hurt the lady, and now she was thinking about radical changes in the interior, so she said she would start by replacing the furniture. Even if it was imitations, it was important to create an atmosphere that reflected the era and style of Arundel, despite its age. She added that the Arundel era ended more than 1,000 years ago, but its style still seems incredibly modern and elegant, worthy of repetition. Suddenly, the lady heard a familiar voice asking what brought her to this place. It sounded friendly, but a little mocking. Rosemary stood before her and noted that her comments about the furniture seemed to have hurt her feelings. However, she praised the store's choice, emphasizing that Arundel's furniture was truly luxurious. Ariel smiled and assumed that Rosemary had come to buy furniture too. She found the idea curious, but slightly comical given her friend's style. Rosemary said she could handle it herself. In her opinion, the main thing was good taste, not just choosing expensive things. She sincerely doubted that Ariel could handle it. Taste, she added, is formed from a young age and is not something that can be acquired or developed quickly. Ariel listened with understanding, agreeing with some of her words. The lady extended her hand to Rosemary, but she immediately pulled it away, considering it a mockery. Her reaction was funny, and Ariel could not hide her joy. Ariel genuinely found Rosemary cute. Her reaction, full of emotion and a little childish resentment, only added to her charm. Ariel's attention was drawn to an old box. Inside was a counterfeit relic of the lowest quality. However, something about the object intrigued her. The sellers apologized for the presence of such goods on the display case and offered to remove them. But the lady asked to stop as she wanted to examine the relic closer. Her premonition was confirmed. In front of her was indeed an interesting object. She understood that its value was hidden behind its external simplicity. At that moment, Rosemary walked over, noticing that Ariel had once again chosen something that looked like the worst possible option. She added that such a thing was as if created for Ariel, because an old and cheap thing is more a symbol of poverty than of refined taste. Ariel thought about her words, but decided to find out the value of this thing. Perhaps its hidden value would justify the interest. The sellers explained that the item is not for sale. Its age makes it difficult to assess, so there is no exact price. However, Ariel was sure that sooner or later they would change their minds when they learned the true value of the relic. She decided to obtain confirmation of the purchase. The seller, seeing her persistence, agreed to clarify the price, although he himself did not seem to understand why she needed it so much. Rosemary was shocked. It seemed absurd to her to spend money on such an old object. She thought that Ariel's taste clearly left much to be desired. Despite the criticism, Rosemary couldn't help but admit that she had a weakness for such things herself. She had no choice but to accept it. Ariel turned to Julian, asking if he felt anything unusual about the pin. His opinion might shed light on a lot of things. The boy replied that it was just an old hairpin, and he didn't see anything special about it. Perhaps its magical properties were still unknown to the world. Ariel decided to test her hunch. She asked Julian to infuse magic into the hairpin to see if it could reveal its secrets. She gently guided his hand, helping him draw the magic circle. Ariel felt that this could work, and she expected the result. When the magic circle was complete, the hairpin began to glow, confirming that her guess was correct. Julian noted that the glow was not pleasing to the eye, and Rosemary stood there confused, not understanding how this had happened. Ariel mockingly asked if Rosemary liked it, hinting that she might benefit from studying antiques more deeply than Ariel herself. Rosemary got angry and decided to leave. Her irritation was visible, and she clearly had no intention of continuing the conversation. Ariel just smiled, thinking again that Rosemary looked even cuter when she was angry than usual. As Ariel was leaving, she heard a noise from the street. Something was clearly happening, and it caught her attention. She looked out and saw several men taking Rosemary away. She was resisting and screaming loudly, demanding to be released. The men didn't hold her too tightly, but her screams were attracting attention. She clearly felt in danger. Ariel was outraged, saying that the men had decided to kidnap her dog right in front of her, which was brazen and unacceptable. Princess Serenial's head ornaments a magical item created by Arundel technology for the heirs to the throne, and this hairpin is not only an ornament, but also a weapon. The man's leg doesn't move at all, so they started screaming and asking who she is. The knights who had followed Ariel out of the palace wasted no time in quickly intervening to take control of the situation and prevent the conflict from escalating further. One of the men who decided to attack the girl suddenly swung at Ariel, but she deftly dodged the blow, demonstrating excellent reaction. Ariel, without wasting a second, clenched her fist and delivered a powerful, precise punch straight into the attacker's face, thereby instantly putting him at a disadvantage. Her powerful blow literally sent the man flying backwards, which left Rosemary in a state of shock, while the knights watching what was happening still could not understand what exactly was happening. The stunned men, not realizing who this unusual girl was, quickly decided to flee, trying to disappear from sight as quickly as possible. Ariel shouted loudly to the knights that the enemies were escaping, and they immediately rushed in pursuit, intending to catch up with and detain them. One of the men was pleased that the girl had fallen behind, and he was able to hide in a secluded place where he thought no one would be able to find him. However, to his surprise, the emperor was already standing right in front of him, whose servants immediately seized the fugitive, not giving him a chance to escape. The prisoner was immediately thrown to the floor. When he came to his senses and tried to comprehend what had happened, his consciousness was still foggy. When he finally managed to see what was happening clearly, he realized with horror that the emperor himself was standing before him, instilling fear with his very presence. The emperor, looking at the fallen enemy, coldly remarked that, as expected, the rat had finally fallen into the trap. Ariel birthed so that everyone would get out of the way, because everything was running away. It was a criminal who wanted to kidnap the lady. She didn't understand why they weren't catching him, or why knights in general were more important to them than the safety of an honored guest. First of all, she has to be here because other places are dangerous. They will deal with a dangerous criminal. Rosemary came to ask why the mistress was such a good fighter. Ariel didn't quite know what to answer. Her powers improved during close combat in the war, but she was constantly fighting with her brother. She grew up with him, and they fought all the time, so she was used to it. Rosemary was surprised by her skills and began to believe that she had captured His Highness of Power, and she was sure that this was exactly what happened. She thought it was just incredible, but the lady said that it couldn't be. But the redhead said that there are ancient, long-extinct bulls when girls hunt guys, catch them and make them their husbands. Ariel told her not to change the subject, and it looked like she wanted to tell her something. Rosemary said that she didn't want to at all, and so they would see each other later. The girl was shocked that it was so difficult for her to thank her, but she was already ready to wait for them at the next meeting. It was time for her to go to the palace, but suddenly she met the emperor. She was surprised when she saw him. He was also dragging this bastard with him. She was surprised and asked who it was. She also noticed that this man looked very similar to the kidnapper she had recently let escape. The emperor asked if this scum had really done this, and remarked that it was his trophy. It was her gift, he caught it for her. Ariel said she didn't need such gifts, and couldn't believe that he actually caught it himself. His face is pretty, like the face of a cat that has caught a mouse, and also brings useless gifts. The emperor noted that he already had enough trophies, and there was no need to leave him alive. Ariel wondered what he was going to do with it. For some reason, the atmosphere became very serious. She turned to the emperor and said that it was very good, that if there was useful evidence, each one could be interrogated separately, so he should be left alive. The emperor said, "Let him live." The men began to say that she was doing a great job with his She had the reaction of an honored guest of no ordinary person. Since they are here, they can go shopping together. After all, she was here before to buy something for herself. The men started talking about what to do with this man, and the commander said that, as always, he should get rid of them. Rosemary was almost kidnapped by fanatical sectarians, and this was reported to the saint. It's a pity, since that's how it is. If everything had worked out, then it would have been possible to get rid of her forever. Lately, she has been hearing more and more about sectarians, a murder in the capital. It was a sacrifice. They say that aristocrats with good blood are of great value. Among the rumors were talks about a girl that the emperor brought. They say she is a witch of the sectarians, and it seems that the emperor fell for the witch's spell. The girl believed that it was her mother who caused these rumors to spread. She wondered what she was going to do, but her mother said that it was better for her to remain ignorant for now. She must, while she organizes a wonderful stage for her and erases everyone who is aiming for the place of the empress, which I and her daughter must take. Ariel was in the garden where Rosemary's tea party would be held, but she didn't understand why not in the duke's estate, but in the palace garden. The emperor noted that today she went alone, but next time it was impossible. She had to be in the palace, or he would go with her.